Hey, world of lovely low! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we are going to be going guest free today. We are going to play the hits because whenever the NCAA Selection Committee reveals a bracket, everyone wants to fill out a bracket. On this podcast, we're going to be serving all different fronts here. I'm going to give you guys what I'm taking a look at with regards to my bets in the round of 64 in the NCAA Tournament and the first four. But that said, along the way, while I give out those bets, we're going to be giving you guys my entire bracket, all the way from the first four to the final four. I recognize that most of you don't have this too in for the time that first four games tip off, but you're going to get all of them. Every single pick is going to be made here, and what I'm liking in terms of an against the spread perspective, that's going to be here as well. Now, not going to be running through the NIT games quite yet. Those are not listed up on the board, and I will be re-racking these for the Thursday and Fridays for the NCAA Tournament as well in terms of the round of 64 because these numbers certainly are going to move, so I want to give you guys a little bit more depth there, and it's going to be a little bit faster with regards to the individual game breakdowns that I do today in terms of the round of 64 with betting lines that I'm going to be doing on Thursday and Friday as well, just because I do want to give you guys all those picks, get you guys in position to hopefully win your bracket league. I've picked the correct national champion in 2 out of the last 4 years. Had Virginia when they knocked off Auburn, had Kansas when they knocked off North Carolina. It's been pretty much an every other year occurrence. Hopefully this year is going to be a golden one. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @JNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated from there. You're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm just going to give you guys like 10 minutes or so here on what I take a look at in terms of the NCAA bracket pools, in terms of just betting this time of year as well. Just give you guys a little bit of perspective there. We'll recap the 5 games that we saw on Sunday, and then from there we'll take a break and we'll dive into my bracket, and we're going to take 2 breaks along the way, one before I start up the bracket and then one after I do the round of 64 games. So it's going to be relatively commercial free, thanks to everyone over here at VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. But I do think that this time of year, it's very important to not fall in that vector of, oh, I need to take these trends with regards to my bracket. I need to take these sorts of teams or anything like that, because you always hear the cliche of, oh, in the last 10 years, all but one of them, a 12 seed has advanced. I mean, one that I think is very prevalent is that the teams that are in the first 4 in all but 1 year, since we've had the first 4 be in the NCAA tournament, in all but 1 year, we have seen one of those teams advance to at the very minimum the round of 32. And I think that just organically, you're going to get a lot of those picks in there. You're going to have some of those upsets in general, but I don't think that you want to force them. If you flat out just don't like a 12 seed, don't feel like you have to pick a 12 seed. I think that that's very important this time of year. And what's very important as well is because sports betting has become much more prevalent, I mean, it's just all across the country, be mindful to keep your bets separate from your bracket. When you're in a bracket pool, you're going up against a whole bunch of different people, and you're essentially trying to get first place in that bracket league. You are going to pretty much try to take a few risks. You're going to take a few chances. Meanwhile, with your bets, that's just straight up your own money up against the book, casino, what have you, and I do think that it is very important to know the difference between the two. Like, you're going to notice on my bracket, there's going to be a few teams where I'm not going to be taking them outright on the money line, but I'm going to advance them in my bracket. I'm just merely going to take the points. Like, a good example, it's like the Samford versus Kansas game. I'm going to utilize this as an example because I am not going to be taking Samford outright on the money line, mainly because I don't know what to expect out of Hunter Dickinson. I don't know what to expect out of Kevin McCullough, 2 guys that missed the Big 12 Conference Tournament, but I do know that I'm going to be on the points with Samford. I think that there's a very reasonable and logical case to be made that they could be able to win that game outright, even though I don't think that they're necessarily going to win that game even 50% of the time or anything like that, or else I'd be setting them as the outright favorite. I do think that it's a very advantageous spot, and I do think that if you have chaos ensue, that could lead you to being able to win your bracket league, because when it comes to a bracket league, you're not just trying to win that one separate game, and I do think that it varies based on the just in general scoring system, or if you're doing one where you pick each round individually, and then it re-racks for the next round. Then you might be wanting to just do it to where you're going to need to have them outright on the money line in terms of like a power ranking or something like that. That's when you might be wanting to take a few fewer risks. Meanwhile, if you've got a bracket league where you get double for upsets, you want to be taking a few more upsets. Like I still remember when I was in high school, you got the amount of points for the seed that ended up winning that game. So let's say that you picked a 1 seed and they knocked off the 16 seed in the first round of the NCAA tournament. You got 1 point. Meanwhile, if you had a 15 seed knocking off a 2, you got 15 points. And then in the next round, it would double. So if that 15 seed knocked off another team in the round of 32, you then got 30 points for that win. Like, that's when you want to be taking a whole bunch of upsets, and that was pretty much my strategy. I actually did quite well in those leagues every single year. Shout out to our good friend Nate Pritzel out there in Hortonville High School. Hopefully he is doing well, but that's where you want to take more risks. And if you're taking a look at like an ESPN generic one where you get the same amount of points, upset, or just a favorite being able to win, but at the same time, it doubles round by round in terms of points, I would say you go somewhat moderate, like what I'm doing. A few teams that maybe against the spread, you're not going to be willing to take outright on the money line, but you're going to be willing to ride with them in terms of the points. Maybe you get there on a little bit of an upset. Meanwhile, like I said, if it's round by round, then you probably want to be playing it much more conservatively. So I think that that's very important. And I also have to throw this out there as well. I'm sure that my mother is listening, and love you, Mom, but you get 1 bracket per format, because I do think that if you have various formats that you're in, you get 1 per format. But that said, do not be the person that fills out 40 brackets and then brags about picking an upset correctly in bracket number 32. If you picked it on your first bracket, great. Gloat about it. If that's your main bracket, good on you. That said, do not be the person that's like, oh, I had the 15 seed in bracket number 37. Well, to utilize a Billy Madison line, you get no points, and may God have mercy on your soul, because you get nothing for it. You just pick so many combinations and you just so happen to be a squirrel that found a nut on that one. So congratulations there. Hopefully I answered as many questions as I could. Like I said, if you've got any other questions that I was not able to clear up, hit those up to me on Twitter/X at @GN_D1. Send those into the timeline. My DMs, they are a black hole. The letters EM, they mean does not matter. But that said, we saw a few games for college basketball on Sunday that were intriguing. Let's give you guys a brief recap of what we all saw on Sunday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Something that is trending is these Illinois overs. They have played nearly 70% of their games to the over thus far this season. They take down Wisconsin 93-87 in the Big Ten title game. That was the last game that we saw prior to the NCAA tournament. As a matter of fact, 24 overs to 10 unders for Illinois thus far this season. Both teams go 7-20 from three-point range, but Illinois 26 of 30 at the free throw line. Terrence Shannon, 34 points, 15 of 17 at the charity stripe. Marcus Domask, 26 points. Wisconsin actually wins the turnover battle 9-7, but Illinois wins that rebound battle 37-30. And it's a Wisconsin team that looked a little bit better this week. Still have some question marks there. My DK Network write-up did not hit, unfortunately. Still 16 games above 500 going into the NCAA tournament. Let's look to have an absolutely spectacular tournament, as I took the points with Florida and they just couldn't hit shots in the second half. Auburn, they win by a count of 86-67. Do note that Micah Handglon, he went out of this game after like 2 minutes. That is not great to say the least, but what was solid, Auburn. They were able to go 18 of 22 at the free throw line. G&I Broom was cleaning up, 19 points, 11 boards. And for Florida, they actually win the rebound battle in this one. They win it by a count of, on the offensive glass, 13 offensive rebounds to Auburn's 6, but for Auburn, even though they committed more turnovers than Florida, they just couldn't find the bottom of the basket. 1 of 13 from three-point range. That was a big, giant issue for them, and Auburn has been a relatively good money-making team for you all season long, and this Brown team was really able to emerge towards back half of the season. They cover against Yale, but they missed free throws at the end of the game to deny them a trip to the NCAA tournament. Yale, they survive, they advance, they win by a count of 62-61, going 7-22 from three-point range was Yale, and Yale did win the rebound battle 41-34. Danny Wolf, he was a man in this game, 4 blocks, 13 rebounds. Both of these teams were somewhat cold from the floor, but Yale, they win the turnover battle 9-8, and more importantly for Brown, they went 8 of 15 at the free throw line. Oh, so costly to that team. This was costly for VCU, going completely ice cold. They lose to Duquesne, 57-51. Duquesne goes dancing after VCU went 5 of 24 from three-point range. Good news, we will be seeing VCU in the NIT, and Joe Bejmili was able to give the team 20 points off the bench. Problem was, the entire starting unit for this VCU team, they weren't able to score a whole lot more than that. They had a combined 27 points, and for Duquesne, it was a night where they were very, very cold. They go only about 29.5% from the floor, but Fusani Drame, he helped the team win the rebound battle 41-32. He's a part of that St. Peter's Elite 8 team. He was able to supply the team with 12 rebounds, and after we saw some shadiness a few weeks ago in the Temple versus UAB game where UAB blew out Temple, UAB blew out Temple again, 85-69. The final, very, very nice, as Temple goes just 5 of 21 from three-point range. UAB wins the turnover battle by a count of 14-8. They had 29 big points from, don't call his name, Alejandro Vasquez. Meanwhile, Yaxel Lenborg, 14 points, 16 rebounds. UAB, they are a bid thief. They go to the NCAA Tournament, and that's what we all saw in college basketball on Sunday. And if you're looking trend-wise, what we've all seen this season in college basketball, it has been a year of overs, and it's been a year of favorites. The favorites overall are hitting at a clip of about 50.6% against the spread. 2,788, 2,718, and 98 against the spread for favorites. Meanwhile, overs hitting at 50.9% for the season. 2,821 overs, 2,718 unders, but we did see quite a few unders when it came to championship week, last 7 days in college basketball. 52.2% hit rate to the under, 96 overs, 105 unders. Meanwhile, favorites went 99, 104 against the spread. Pretty much as 50-50 as it gets last 7 days. So that's what we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Now let's get you guys a bracket. We're going to be running through it. I'm going to give you guys my straight up picks, my betting against the spread picks for the round of 64 next, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Gibbs Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast, and also giving you guys my first four as well. That's right here on Coast to Coast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Gibbs Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. We are not going to be going with any sort of a guest today. This is a special podcast. Typically, when I give out all my picks and analysis, we're going in Las Vegas, the rotation order and everything like that. Not today, because I know that there are many of you out there that you're involved in a bracket pool. We want to help you guys out. I'll be going through these first round games here in this segment, giving you guys what I do like against the spread and what I'm taking a look at on that front, but also giving you my straight up winners in the final segment. After we go through these first round games, it is all just straight up what I'm looking for in the round of 32, Sweet 16. Because you're listening to this podcast, you get my full bracket absolutely free, because I don't want to post it up on social media. I have 100 million billion people, do absolutely no research whatsoever, and just fill it out. If you listen to the podcast, you get rewarded. If you go on Twitter/XBLazy, you get nothing and like it, so you get rewarded for listening to this podcast, but we've got ourselves a tremendous bracket. Let's go through all these games, get you guys my picks and analysis on every single one of them as we go region by region, as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
And then for the order, we're going straight down the line. We're going to start with the East first with that Stetson versus UConn game and just go in seeding from there. And then we go to the West, and then we will go up to the Southern region, and then we will finish it off with the Midwest. So how about if we get things started with the 1-16 matchup. This is old Stetson versus UConn. If you're looking from a betting perspective right now, UConn, they are laying the Mondo number of between 26 and 26.5 points. So on this game is 144 that I'm seeing at DraftKings, and this would be a spot where I'd be looking at the over. I set my total at 144, and honestly, I'd be willing to lay 26. As you can probably imagine, I did advance UConn in terms of my bracket, and man, I just cannot get behind this Stetson team. They're a bunch that they love to be able to bomb it from three, and this is a UConn team that they are going to give it up a little bit from three-point range. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, that does decline to right around about 33 or so percent in a road/neutral court environment. But Stetson is going to get hosts on the glass. You've got Donovan Clingan, you've got Alex Garabin, so many guys that do an incredible job on that front. Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, they combine for 30 points per contest. And I like Jalen Blackman for Stetson. He's been able to give you 20 points per contest. He shoots it well from three-point. It's Stetson, with regards to their overall three-point shooting percentage, it is a team that they travel okay with that regard. I'm not going to say that they travel amazing with it, but you know what? It could be a little bit worse for Stetson overall in terms of college basketball. 38th in the country in three-point shooting percentage. They shoot about 35% when they're away from home, but I mean, this is going to be a really rough battle. Stetson does a good job of not turning the ball over, but you've got a UConn team that they don't turn the ball over as well. UConn is a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, top 15 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do it at home, they do it on the road. They have been beastly out of conference. I think that Stetson is just going to get completely outsized and completely outgunned. I'm willing to lay up to 26 with UConn, certainly advancing them in my bracket. And in terms of the 144 that I'm seeing initially, I'm going to be taking a look at that over as well. Now, how about if we hit the 8-9 matchup? This is Florida Atlantic versus Northwestern, and if you're looking at a betting perspective right now, Florida Atlantic is a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 140.5, and I'd be willing to take the over on this spot. I set my total at 146. You've got a Florida Atlantic team that has been very good with their offense. They're a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are outside the top 125, but you've got a Northwestern team that their nickname with regards to their three-point shooting defense should be Hickory, because they are getting absolutely smoked. Northwestern, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage away from home, about 36%. That is not great, to say the least. I do think that they're going to have their issues there. I love Boo Buie, what he's able to provide for a Northwestern team that's one of the best in all of college basketball in terms of not giving the ball away, in terms of being able to hunker down with that regard. That said, this is a bunch that I think is really going to be up against it with regards to their defense. They just have not been able to play much of it this season. Vladislav Golden, along with your other top three scorers for this Florida Atlantic team, John L. Davis, Elijah Martin, they all give you at least 6 rebounds per game. Golden is a 7-footer. It's able to give you a block and a half per contest. And for Northwestern, really outside of Brooks Barnhizer, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Northwestern, outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Florida Atlantic also does a solid job of being able to take care of the ball. I did set Florida Atlantic as a 2-point favorite. I'm advancing them in my bracket. And on top of that, here at a 1.5, I'm seeing that right now at DraftKings. I would be willing to lay that. Wouldn't want to lay much more than 1.5, but I'd like Florida Atlantic to be able to advance in this 8-9 matchup, and I do like up to laying 1.5 with Florida Atlantic along with that over. Now let's hit the 5 versus 12 matchup. This is old San Diego State versus UAB, and if you're looking in terms of a betting perspective, it is the Blazers, who are a 7 to a 7.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 134.5, and I did set my total at 142. It's very strange that this is such a low total. I recognize that this is a San Diego State team that is very much more defense oriented, but we have seen some cracks in the armor in terms of the San Diego State defense, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They just aren't the same team that they were a season ago. They're 34th in the country, but they are allowing darn near about 11 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. They do a nice job of being able to lock down from three-point range, but this is a UAB team that they're not looking to bomb it from three. They only shoot about 32.5% from three-point range, and this UAB bunch, its whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is a team that they absolutely love to hit the offensive glass to be able to generate offensive production. Yaxel Lenborg has been able to give you 13 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. In terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, UAB is 21st in all of college basketball. They have to go up against Jaden Ledee, who has been able to give the San Diego State team a little bit more offensive pop. He's able to give you 20 points, supplies you with about 8 or so rebounds per game. Now, outside of that, it's a whole lot of Micah Parrish, Reese Dixon Waters. These two guys give you about 10 points per contest. Dixon Waters shoots relatively well from three-point range, and when it comes to San Diego State, they have not been amazing with their three-point shooting, but this is a UAB team that also has been very lackadaisical on defense. They are outside the top 240 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that they're going to have their struggles here, and San Diego State, they haven't been able to get a lot out of their heroes in Darion Trammell along with Lamont Butler, who are back from the season ago, but these two guys, they've been able to give you a little bit of facilitation, give you some good, clean offense. So I do think that this is a spot where San Diego State should be able to survive and advance. I did set them as an 8-point favorite, so seeing the 7 to 7.5 that I'm seeing right now, I'd be willing to lay that number, and on top of that, it is a spot where I look at the over over. So San Diego State to advance in this matchup, along with them laying the points and the over. How about if we hit the 4-13 matchup? This is Auburn versus Yale, and this is a spot where Auburn is a 12.5 point favorite on the spread. Total on this game is 138.5, and I did set my total 142. I'm looking at the over, and I said Auburn has a 14-point favorite, so this is a spot where I do not think we're getting an upset. I do like Auburn to be able to survive and advance here, and I'd like them to be able to lay this number. It is a Yale team that has done a great job on the glass. Top 70 team with regards to rebound rate. You've got a guy, Danny Wolf, who's able to give you 14 points, 9.5 boards, and at 7 feet tall, he's able to pop it from three-point range for a Yale team that is clean with the ball. Go figure, the smart kids. They do the little things well. They do a solid job at the free throw line. They do a nice job being able to hit the boards, but this is also a Yale team that they don't give themselves a lot of second chances, 200th in all of college basketball with regards to offensive rebound rate, and this is a Auburn team that is very complete in that entering into the SEC title game, they were really the lone team in all of college basketball that was in the top 8 in regards to both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. This team shoots a much better from three-point range than they did a season ago. This Auburn team has been able to do so much in terms of just being able to have so much out there in the backcourt. You've got someone like Jalen Williams, who's 6'6". He's able to let it fly from three-point range. He gives you double figures. Aiden Holloway has had a little bit of fall off, but Trey Donaldson, he's done a nice job generating some turnovers. This Auburn team is a top 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They really don't let you do a great job of just getting into your offense in general, and that they are also number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. G&I Broom is cleaning up with 16 points, 8 boards. He's able to let it fly from three-point range. Yale just has not seen this level of athleticism. I do think that Yale is going to give it their best effort, but I think that Auburn here at a 4, they got underseeded. This is a very complete team. They do a nice job not beating themselves. They've been much better on offense this season, so I did set my total at 142. It's an Auburn team that they play a little bit more up-tempo. I do think that they're going to take it to a Yale team that, to their credit, entering into this game, they have given up now 73 points for fear in regulation on all but 2 out of their last 16 games, but this Auburn team, they can put up 80 in a flash. We've seen them take down teams like South Carolina, who are sort of similar to Yale in very convincing fashion, and I do think that they do so here. I'm willing to lay the number with Auburn, advance them in my bracket, and here with this total at a 138.5, I like the over. I did set my total at a 142. How about if we hit the 6-11 matchup? This is Old Duquesne versus BYU, and in terms of the spread in this one, BYU, you're finding them as a favorite of about 7 points in a lot of spots. We've been seeing a bit of movement on this one, and then in terms of the total, you're going to be getting this right around about a 140.5, and it's a circumstance where I'm willing to lay up to 8.5 with BYU. I think that Duquesne is going to have a tough time just guarding the overall versatility and the breadth of scoring options for BYU. BYU has 7 different guys that are able to give you at least 9 points per contest. You've got a lot of guys that are able to pass the ball. Ali Khalifa is someone that's saying 6'11". He gives you 4+ assists per contest. This BYU team has been very complete in that. They're a top 55 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're a top 35 team in terms of rebound rate, despite the fact that they don't really have anyone that gives you north of, I would say, about 7 or so rebounds per game, as you've had Noah Waterman do a solid job down low. Spencer Johnson is able to give you about 6 boards, but for Duquesne, I absolutely love the duo that they've got in Day-Day Grant along Jimmy Clark. These guys, they average about 32 points, 6.5 assists, both bombing at about a 34% clip from three-point range. Nobody else on the roster gives you north of 7.2 points per game. It's a Duquesne team that is pedestrian on the glass. They do an okay job of being able to force turnovers. They're a top 60 team in all of college basketball in that regard, but this BYU team has been very efficient with the ball. This is a little bit of a tricky spot in terms of travel because they're going to be out there in Omaha, Nebraska, but it could be worse for this BYU team. I do think that BYU should be able to persevere against a Duquesne team that they turn the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like as well. This BYU team, they attempt a whole bunch of threes, and to the credit of Duquesne, they've actually played a little bit better with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis away from home rather than at home. They've been looking to make things big, giant slogs, but I just don't think that they're going to be able to slow down this BYU team and just all the scoring options that they do have. That is why I set BYU as a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I advance them in my bracket, and here at a 140.5 that I'm seeing right now in terms of the total, I'm going to be looking at the over. How about if we hit Morehead State and Illinois? This is going to be the 14-3 matchup, and with Illinois. You're finding them as a 13 to a 13.5 point favorite. Total is 148.5. This is the first one that I have where I'm not going to advance a team outright, but I'm going to be taking a look at the points, as I did set Morehead State as a 10.5 point underdog. 13 to 13.5 is a little bit too lofty, just flat out because Illinois has just given up on the defensive side of things. Now, offensively, Illinois has been awesome. Illinois is the number one team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in a road/neutral court environment. And you've got a whole bunch of guys that pack the boards. Each of your top 5 scorers are able to give you at least 4 rebounds per game. Terrence Shannon has become one of the most dynamic scorers in all of college basketball. 22.5 points per contest. You've got Coleman Hawkins, who's very complete. 12.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. You've got Quincy Guerrier. He's able to give you 6.5 boards. He shoots 38% from 3-point range. The list goes on and on, but for Morehead State, I absolutely love what you're able to get out of Riley Minix. He's someone that is able to give you about 20 points, 8 rebounds per contest. Morehead State is one of the few mid-major teams that can match up Illinois on the boards. Illinois, a top 20 team in terms of rebound rate. Morehead State, they're a top 40 team with regards to rebound rate. Morehead State had just a little bit of a lull when it came to OVC play towards like late January, early February, but a very complete team with someone like a Drew Thelwell who's able to give you about 6 assists per contest. Morehead State is pretty darn efficient with their offense as well. Typically, this has been a team that has been doomed by turnovers. They still do turn the ball over about 12 times per contest, but they shoot about 36% from 3-point range. Morehead State, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, not quite on the level of Illinois, but they're a top 85 team with this regard as well. I do think that you're going to get enough offense out of someone like Khalil Thomas, Jordan Lathan. These two guys combined average about 27.5 points per contest, combined to shoot 40% from 3-point range for Morehead State to remain lively against an Illinois team that, since the turn of the calendar, because they actually started out a really good defense, and then I don't know, when the calendar turned to 2024, they decided not to play any more defense, went down the toilet bowl from there. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Morehead State. Did advance number 3 Illinois in my bracket, but I'm willing to take those 13 points, and at a 148.5, I think that this is a little bit too lofty. Morehead State in the bottom 100 with regards to total possessions per game. I think they slow it down, so I like the under in the spots at my total 146.5 and take the points with Morehead State. How about if we hit the 7-10 matchup? This is Drake versus Washington State. This is a pick'em to Washington State being a 1.5 point favorite. Your total on this game is 138.5. I like Drake to be able to advance here. I set them as a 2-point favorite, so if you're catching them as an underdog, I'm just going to be taking them outright on the money line. It's a Drake unit that has been able to do a very rock-solid job all season long of just being a complete team. They're a top 75 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're going to have the best player out there on the floor. That'd be Tucker DeVries, coach's son, 21.5 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shoots 36.5% for 3-point range, stealing half per contest. He does it all, but then you've got Darnell Brody, who does a really nice job on the boards. He's able to give you about 8 rebounds per game, and that has been one of the bread and butter pieces for this Washington State team. Washington State has been able to do a nice job on the glass. You've been able to have them be a top 20 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Andre Yagmovsky, the gentleman from North Macedonia, has been able to do a nice job. He's able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per game. He pops them from 3-point range. And then you got Isaac Jones. Keep it up with the Jones. He's able to give you about 7.5 boards per contest, but for Washington State, they do lack a little bit of pizzazz from the outside. You've had Miles Rice be one of the best stories in all of college basketball, overcoming, I think it was cancer, 4 assists, 15 points per contest. You've been able to have Jaden Wells step up, shoot 42.5% from 3-point range, and it's a Washington State team that they don't get out of sorts. They only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. Drake only turns the ball over about 9.5 times per game. They had a nice win when they came out here to lovely Las Vegas against the Nevada Wolfpack. You've got nice ancillary pieces like Cooper Enright, along with Mr. Kobe Garland. These two guys, they combine to be able to give you about 5.5 assists per contest. Aiden Wright has been right for the team, 14 points per game. You've got a lot of good outside shooting. Drake is also a team that does a solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. I'm not going to call them amazing by any stretch of the imagination, and when it comes to allowing points on a per possession basis away from home, it is going to take a little bit of a fall off, but it does the same thing for this Washington State team as well. For Washington State, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they do allow opponents to shoot just 32% from 3-point range, so they've been able to do a pretty solid job with that respect. Drake more around about 33%, but I do think that Drake is able to match up with Washington State on the boards, and I think that DeVries is the best player out there on the floor. So I do like this Washington State team outright on the money line. With regards to the total, I did set it at a 136. I do think that you get some relatively solid defense here. Drake is not an up-tempo team. Washington State, well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game, so I like the under, and I like Drake outright on the money line. And how about if we hit that 215 matchup? This will wrap up the East region, and It is Longwood versus Iowa State who are going to be doing battle, and for Iowa State, they're currently a 15.5 to a 16.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 133, and I think that this is going to be very much a low-scoring slog. I did set my total at a 139.5 though, so I'm going to look at this 133.5 over, and the biggest reason why is that South Dakota State has been a really efficient offense. They're a top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and this team absolutely lights it up from three-point range, and if there is one small kryptonite when it comes to this Iowa State defense, which is incredible, they're a top 3 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do allow opponents to shoot right around about 33% from three-point range in a road/score venue, and South Dakota State is honestly where TJ Altenberger used to coach at. So there's going to be a little bit of familiarity in the building with them. Obviously, that was quite a few years ago, so things have changed ever since then, but you got a sense that there's going to be a little bit of a fun rivalry there. But that said, this is a South Dakota State team that they're able to get on a heater. They're able to hit a bunch of threes at will. They shoot about 36.8% from three-point range when they are away from home. The problem for the South Dakota State team is that they are awful on defense. They are well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and while we talk up this Iowa State defense, rightfully so, this is also an Iowa State team that's a top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Like Davon Lipsby, Kashawn Gilbert, they're not quite the scoring guards that you're going to see at some of these other flashy universities, but I mean, that said, these are guys that do a very nice job of being able to supply the team with some offense. These two guys may be able to combine to be able to give you about 28 to 30 points per contest. They both average about 14 to 15 points per game. They both give you a combined north of 4 steals per contest. Both shoot it well from three-point range, especially Lipsby. They don't turn the ball over a heck of a lot. Milan Mimosilovic, he's able to shoot it well from three-point range as well. He's able to help things out. And with Iowa State, they do a nice job of being a rebound by committee. You're not going to get that one guy that's going to go out there and give you like a double-figure amount of rebounds or anything like that, but it's a nice wholes greater than some of its parts sort of effort. Iowa State has been improving on that front all season long. They were getting pounded on the boards a little bit towards the beginning part of the season, but they've been able to have some guys like Robert Jones be able to step up, be able to shore that up, and I do think that this is going to be a rough spot for a South Dakota State team that, with the right matchup, I feel like they could be able to cause a little bit of havoc. This is not the right matchup, though. This is an Iowa State team as a tough comer. I really think that they're one of the most complete teams in the NCAA tournament, and even though they play great defense, I do think that they're going to have quite a few threes against South Dakota State, who they themselves, they're going to find a few shots to go, but I did set my line at a 17.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the 16.5 for Iowa State. Obviously not calling for the upset on my bracket on this one, and in terms of total, I like it over. I did set my total at a 139.5. And now let's go to Houston's region, and let's go to that 160 matchup of Houston versus Longwood. And with Houston, you are finding them as north of a 20-point favorite in this spot, and I am going to be willing to take the points with Longwood. I am not going to be advancing Longwood in my bracket, but right now we're finding Longwood as a 22 to a 23-point underdog, and the total on this game is 128.5. And part of the reason why I do like the points with Longwood is that I just think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog and just complete sadness. I set my total at 124.5. I'm looking at the under. This Longwood team has honestly been a very good team in terms of their defense. They're a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're a top 25 team in terms of rebound rate. They're not going to get completely blown away on the boards unlike a lot of mid-major teams. Now, for Longwood, they have seen their defense sort of regress a little bit throughout the season. They're giving up about 10 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than when they are at home, but you do have someone in Michael Christmas down low who's able to give you about 7 boards per contest, relatively good versatility. Waylon Napper is able to give you about 4 assists per game, and they're outgunned by Houston. There's no question about it. This is a Houston unit that has a very nice three-point shooter that I like, and LJ Cryer has been able to do a nice job leading the team with about 15.5 points per contest, and don't sleep on Jamal Shett. He's really been able to step up his scoring recently. He has been able to give the team double figures in now each of the team's last 6 games, and all but one of the team's last 11 games after he was a little bit more of a pass-first guy towards the beginning part of the season. Does a nice job making sure that Houston keeps their possessions clean as well. Houston is a bottom 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, but even with that, they're still a top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Want to see a little bit more of Damian Dunn, who's been only giving you about 6.5 points per contest, but you've had Emmanuel Sharp be able to supply the team with about 12 points per contest. You know that Javier Francis is going to do a nice job down low. He and Juwan Roberts combined for 12 rebounds per game. Longwood, I think that they do just enough to be able to hold in there because I do like their forward forward stable, so I do think that this line of like 22.5, 23, it's gone a little bit too far. I'm going to be willing to take those points. That said, this is a circumstance, though, that I'm also going to be looking at the under on semi-total 124.5. I think that you get yourself a pretty low-scoring slug, so looking at those points, but at the same time, advancing Houston in my bracket, and also taking a look at the under. Now we get the 8-9 matchup. This is going to be Nebraska versus Texas A&M, and it is Nebraska who currently finds themselves as a favorite in this pod. You're going to be laying with Nebraska anywhere in that neighborhood about 1.5 to 3 points. We're seeing quite a range there. Total on this game is 143.5, and I like Texas A&M in this matchup. I set them as a 1.5 point favorite, and the reason why I like Texas A&M, I think that they bludgeon Nebraska on the boards. And Rink Bask, he's a nice player, and Rink Bask has been able to do a nice job being able to give you about 15 points, 7 boards. He pops it from 3-point range for a Nebraska team that, I mean, they're okay in terms of being able to hit the boards. Nebraska, in terms of their overall rebound rate, 151st, but Texas A&M, a top 3 team in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that they're able to corral as an offensive rebound. Now, what stinks about this Texas A&M team is their shooting. Going into the NCAA Tournament, they were a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, but they do have a takeover scorer, much like Nebraska does in Casey Shomanaga. Shomanaga, he does a really good job of being able to electrify the crowd with his threes. He doesn't do anything else, though. Like, you've got a guy in Wade Taylor that gives you 18 points. He is not the shooter that Shomanaga does, but he's a complete player. He does give you about 4+ rebounds per game. He's able to give you 4 assists, and for Texas A&M, out of their top 5 scorers, all but one of them do give you at least 4.5 rebounds per game. Anderson Garcia is able to give you about 9.5 boards per contest. It's a Nebraska team that has been able to do a solid job of getting Bryce Williams into the fold as well. I like what he's been able to provide for this team. Juwan Gary has been solid as well, but I look at Texas A&M's overall depth on that front line. I do think that it's going to take it out of this Nebraska team a little bit, and this is a Nebraska team that sometimes they do have a little bit of a tough time guarding the 3 away from home. Opponents shoot about 33.7% from distance against them away from home, and Nebraska has had their struggles when they've been away from home. They do give up north of 10 points more per 100 possessions at a road/score venue rather than at home. You do have a Texas A&M team that in their own right, they do allow opponents to shoot 35.2% from 3-point range away from home as well, but I'm going to be willing to ride with the rebounding of Texas A&M in this spot. I do like them on the money line, and did set my total 143.5. Right now, we are seeing an opener of 143.5 in terms of total, so if we could get down to a 143 or less, I'd be looking at the over. 144 or higher, that'd be my buy point on the under. Now we get the 5-12 matchup. This is Wisconsin versus James Madison, and right now we're finding Wisconsin as a 5 to a 5.5 point favorite, and I completely disagree. Here's our first big upset. I like James Madison outright on the money line. I set them as a favorite in this spot. I'm advancing them in my bracket, and I'm going to be willing to take a plus number on them outright, and right now we're finding that total at a 143.5, and I'm going to be looking at that over because Wisconsin is ghastly in terms of their defense. This Wisconsin bunch is outside the top 200 in a road/shoot-scored environment in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I criticize Illinois for their defense. Wisconsin going into yesterday, they're allowing opponents to shoot 39.5% from 3-point range when they're outside the Kohl Center. Like, good grief. And now you have to go up against a James Madison team that they're Noah's Ark. They've got 2 of everything. You've got TJ Bickerstaff, who does a nice job, give you 8 rebounds per game. Terrence Edwards, he does a rock-solid job being able to provide 17 points per contest. This is a James Madison team that, they've won up against the Big Ten in the past. They went on the road. They knocked off Michigan State. To the credit of Wisconsin, they were able to do that as well. So both are on equal footing on that front. But I feel like Wisconsin, outside of Penn State, they haven't seen a style, much like James Madison, where they do rip the ball away. They're a top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They're a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Noah Friedel is able to give you double figures. He shoots the ball from 3. Julian Wooded, he shoots the ball from 3. James Madison runs it, guns it. They're in the top 40 in terms of total possessions per game, yet they play that good defense, yet they also give you good offense as well. Tyler Wall, along with Stephen Crawl, they're solid down low, give you about 13 or so rebounds per game. AJ Storr has seen his 3-point shooting come back a little bit, but this is a Wisconsin team that has had their struggles when they've been away from home, especially with regards to their defense. James Madison, while they play fast, they play in sort of rhythm with one another, and this is a Wisconsin team that in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, yes, they have been quite impressive with this regard. They're 44th in all of college basketball, but they do average about 10.5 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home. I think that James Madison is able to pull this game out. I like them outright on the money line. I'm advancing them in my bracket, and did set my total at a 145 as well, so if you're looking at the total of 143.5, I do like the over. And then we've got Vermont versus Duke. Vermont is an 11 went to 11.5 point underdog. Your total on this game is 131.5, and I did set Duke as a 14.5 point favorite. I'm advancing them in my bracket. No upset here, and I'm going to be willing to lay the points with Duke. You've got a Vermont team that they weren't necessarily super impressive out of conference. I feel like they just beat up on a relatively pedestrian America East. For this Vermont team, you don't have a single guy that gives you a north of 5.5 rebounds per game. That'd be Shamira Bogues, who stands 6'4". They just don't really have any hope whatsoever of being able to contain Kyle Filipowski, who, I mean, just make sure that you don't storm the court on him. But that said, with Mr. Filipowski, he's been able to give you 17 points, 8 boards. He's someone that stands 7 feet tall, that's able to pop it from 3 points for a Duke team that is in the top 25 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And his Duke team just does not get out of sorts. Really, both of these teams do not. Now, you've got a Vermont team that's super slow. They're outside the top 320 in terms of total possessions per game, but they make the most out of their possessions. They only turn it over about 9 times per contest. Have someone in 6'8", Matt Verrado, is able to shoot 34.5% from 3, but he really doesn't hit the boards at all. This Vermont team, they're not going to put a lot of pressure on you in terms of being able to generate turnovers. It's been a Vermont team that's been able to do a pretty solid job at being able to guard the 3-point arc, but if you look at the way that they were guarding in non-conference play versus conference play, just a completely different team in general. If you take a look at what they did in non-conference play, this was a Vermont bunch that they were allowing opponents to shoot about 33% from 3-point. They were about 161st in all of college basketball. They were outside the top 100 with regards to their defensive efficiency. I feel like their numbers have been propped up a little bit by playing against some relatively not so great America East competition. This is a Duke team that's good to be able to win that battle down low. You've got Mark Mitchell who's able to give you 6+ rebounds per game, and for Vermont, you just don't have those go-to scorers like you've had in the past. Aaron Deloney has been able to give you about double figures, 3 assists per contest. CJ Long throws in their 12 points per game, and I mean, to the credit of Vermont, they've been one of your top under teams in all of college basketball, but this is a Duke team that they come in just having been a complete monsoon in terms of their offense. This is a bunch that they've been able to get past the 76-point plateau, and I believe all but 2 out of their last 10 games. I do think that they're going to be able to put up the north of 70 against Vermont. Needed to be able to hit this total over, so looking there, set my total 134.5, and advancing Duke on my bracket and laying the points with Duke, set them as a 14.5 point favorite. Now we get the 6-11 matchup of Texas Tech versus NC State, and NC State currently find themselves as an underdog on a number that's been a little bit on the move. Initially, we were seeing this number more around about a 4 to a 4.5. As I'm recording this right now, we're finding NC State as more of a 5 to a 5.5 point underdog. Dawn's game is 145.5. If you could get a 5.5, and I'm right now seeing a lot of this popping up, I would be willing to take the points with NC State. NC State actually does a really good job of being able to just take care of the ball. This is a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. DJ Turn It Up Burns has been able to do a really nice job along with DJ Turn It Up Horn. Horn is able to supply the team with 17 points. He throws in there only about 2 assists per contest, but shoots 41.5% from 3-point range. And for NC State, Michael O'Connell and his scoring has really been able to elevate this team. During the ACC tournament, he had at least 10 points in every one of those games. He had fewer than 5 double-figure scoring games all season long. I mean, it's been incredible the way that he's been able to turn it on. And this is a Texas Tech team that really doesn't defend when they're away from home. Away from home, they're giving up north of 15 points more per 100 possession basis rather than when they are at home. And this is a Texas Tech team under the tutelage of Grant McCasland that I did think was going to be a relatively solid defense. Now, for NC State, this is also a team that is giving up the arc. NC State, 243rd in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It's a Texas Tech team that they're 74th in all of college basketball, but they allow opponents to shoot 29% from 3-point range at home, 35.8% in a road or neutral court venue. And with both of these teams doing a very nice job of being able to take care of the ball, I do think that you're going to get points on the board. I did set my total 147. This is despite the fact that Texas Tech, really not an up-tempo team, but they do a nice job of giving themselves some second chances as well. Darian Williams, along with Warren Washington, they both supply you with about 7.5 or so rebounds per game. You've been able to have Joe Toussaint give you good offense. He and Pops Isaacs have been able to give you about 8 assists per game. Isaacs, he's only shooting about 30% from 3, but supplies the team with 16 points per game. Texas Tech, they shoot about 36.5% from 3-point range, and this has been legitimately one of your top offenses in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in all of college basketball. Texas Tech clocking in 50th with that regard, only scoring about 5.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when away from home rather than when they are at home. And for NC State, they're about 84th with this regard, but with both of these teams having some defensive issues, I do think that NC State holds in there. Now with Texas Tech, I did set them as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to advance them in my bracket, but in a betting perspective, if you're able to get north of 5, looking at those points with NC State to go along this total over. How about if we hit the old 3-14 matchup? This is going to be Kentucky going up against Oakland, and With regards to this one, you've got Kentucky a 13 to a 13.5 point favorite, and your total is 161.5. Oakland has been playing a very slow tempo, but yet I'm going to be looking at the over at a 163.5. This Oakland team, the reason why I like the over is because they are just getting absolutely barbecued from the outside. Oakland is 229th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, if you are a believer in Oakland, there's one thing I will say. They're giving up north of 10 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. I have no idea how, I have no idea why, but they play much better defense away from home rather than at home. But now you go up against a rocket ship of a Kentucky team that they've honestly been able to do an okay job of being able to guard the three-point line, but everything else has been bad for this Kentucky team. They're outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I like Reed Shepherd. He's able to give you multiple steals. He's able to spy you with about 12.5 points per contest. Bombs it at north of 40% from three, and as a matter of fact, for Kentucky, each of your top three scorers do shoot north of 42% from three-point range, headlined by Antonio Reeves, but I do think that this is a Kentucky team that can go on a little bit of a run because now they finally have all their pieces out there. Big Z was someone that was not in the fold towards the beginning part of the season. You did not have Aaron Bradshaw at the beginning part of the campaign. Robert Dillingham coming off the bench has been so complete. And for Kentucky, even if their three is not falling, they're a top 5 team in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage, and it's traveled relatively well for them. They do a nice job of just not turning the ball over, and this is not an Oakland team that's going to be really forcing the issue, giving you a bunch of turnovers. Trey Townsend is able to give you about 15 points, 7 boards. He shoots it relatively well from three-point. Jack Golke is able to give you a little bit of something out there in the backcourt as well, but I do think that this is a rough state of affairs for Oakland, a team that just year in and year out has not been able to guard the arc to save their lives, going up against one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball in Kentucky that has gotten to at least 85 points in each of their last 5 games. I do like the over. I set my total 163.5 with Kentucky. I think that this is a tremendous matchup for them. I set them as a 15.5 point favorite, so I like Kentucky laying the number. I like Kentucky to advance, and I do like this total over as well. Now, in terms of the 7 versus 10 matchup, Florida versus Boise State, I will say I am advancing Florida no matter who comes out of this Boise State versus Colorado matchup. I think that whoever wins this game, they're just going to have a little bit of a tough time on the glass. I would give Colorado a little bit of a better shot of being able to pull it out than Boise State, just because with Boise State, I do feel like this is a little bit of a top-heavy team, but how about if we do take a look at that first 4 matchup of Colorado versus Boise State? And this is a number where Colorado is a 2-point favorite. Their total on this game, it is 140.5. And when it comes to this Colorado bunch, I did set them as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the deuce. I do think that Colorado is able to pull out this one against a Boise State team that, they've been a pretty well-rounded team. Boise State is a top 35 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. And this is going to be a little bit tough for Colorado in that Boise State is a tremendous three-point shooting defense. In a road or neutral court environment, they allow opponents to shoot 30% from three-point range. That's a top 20 mark in all of college basketball in Colorado. They're a top 25 team in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, but I just look at what you're able to get out of KJ Simpson. Such a complete player. He's done a nice job all season long, supplying 19 points. He's able to throw in there about 6 or so rebounds per game, 4+ assists per game, but then you've got Eddie Lampkin, who should be able to win that battle against Tyson Dagenhart down low. He's able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game. It's a Colorado team that is in the top 25 nationally with regards to their rebound rate. And Chibuzo Egbo, he's able to shoot north of 40% from 3. He's rock solid for Boise State, but who's the main point guard? Because right now, you really don't have anyone outside Cam Martin who's able to give you 2.5 assists per game. And Martin is like a 6'9", little bit of a, for lack of a better term, joker player. So that's a bit of an issue. It is a Colorado team that they do turn the ball over quite a bit. With Colorado, they turn the ball over north of 12 times per contest. That could be a little bit of a kryptonite for them. It's not like this Boise State team is generating a bunch of turnovers and batting down the hatches with that regard either, though. You've been able to have someone in Omar Sandley come in from St. John's. He's been able to supply you with about 13 points. Well, he shoots about 32% from three-point range, but I look at the overall depth of options with regards to Colorado in terms of their scoring as well. And it's a Colorado team that has come on with their defense. They've actually given up 60 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. And it's a Boise State team that they're starting to really lag with regards to their defense. They have given up north of 75 points in each of their last 4 games. I think they can get something in the middle. I think that this is a game close enough for late game following. So I'm going to be taking a look at the over in this spot. I did set my total 142. And with Colorado, I do think that they advance to take on Florida in that matchup. I made Colorado 4-point favorite, so advancing them, I'm willing to lay the number. But again, I do like Florida in this matchup. I think that they're overall rebounding, even with Micah Handglotton currently dealing with an injury. I think that's going to be key. You've got Zion Poland, who's been pulling in buckets. He, along with Walter Clayton, are able to combine for darn near 30 points per contest. Both of these guys shoot it relatively well from 3. And it's a Florida bunch that they had a little bit of a rough go of it in the SEC title game against Auburn. That's a really really, really stinking good Auburn team, though, and I think that that's more just how good they're playing rather than an indictment on this Florida team. So I've got Florida to advance in the Boise State versus Colorado matchup, but Colorado to win and cover that game against Boise State. And then let's hit the 2:15 matchup before we head on over to our next pod, and this is going to be Marquette versus Western Kentucky. And I tell you right now, I'm going to be advancing Marquette in my bracket, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with Western Kentucky. Right now, we're finding Western Kentucky as a double-figure underdog. I set them as a 11.5 point underdog, and right now that number is more around 14.5 to 15, and you got this total at a 158.5. Which it does make sense because Western Kentucky is a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, but this is a Western Kentucky team as well that has been able to do a solid job of being able to lock down on defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this is a Western Kentucky team that ranks in the top 85 nationally, and Western Kentucky does not allow you to get a lot of open looks from three-point range. Western Kentucky in a road/shoot court environment allows you to shoot just 31% from three. Now, what is going to be an issue for Western Kentucky? They turn the ball over about 13.5 times per contest. Marquette is a top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They should have Tyler Kolek back in the fold, but again, even though Tyler Kolek is back, is he going to be 100%? And he's one of the best guards in all of college basketball. He supplies you with 15 plus points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds. He's one of just 2 players on the team that average north of 5 rebounds per game, and that's something you got to take a look at as well. Oso Ogudero is really the lone other guy, with Marquette being outside the top 200 with regards to rebound right now. Like what I've seen out of Cam Jones with Kolek being out the fold, he's been able to give you double figures. He shoots well from three-point range, but this is also not the same Marquette three-point shooting team that we've seen from past seasons as well. So this is a circumstance where I did set my total 155.5. Western Kentucky, with Don McHenry leading the way, he's able to give you 14 points per game. He's a part of a Western Kentucky team that the whole is greater than some of its parts. They only shoot about 32% from three-point range, so even though you get a lot of possessions in this game, I think it falls just short of this total, but I think Western Kentucky holds in there. I did set Western Kentucky as an 11.5 point dog, so I want to take those points, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over as well. So we are through 2 pods, and now we hit the Midwest region that houses Purdue. So I might have went a little bit out of order there from what I was saying. I apologize. I went East with UConn. Houston with the South region was up next. We're hitting Purdue out there in the Midwest. And then North Carolina, that region out there in the West, that is going to be the last one that I hit. So apologize if I screwed that up a little bit there. But this is going to be Purdue versus Old to be determined. I can tell you right now, Purdue is going to advance past whoever is going to be winning in this playing game. You don't need to hold your breath. I don't think we're going to have a Fairleigh Dickinson situation on our hands, as it is going to be Montana State versus Grambling, that winner. But I do have a nice edge here on Montana State versus Grambling. I did set Montana State as a 5.5 point favorite. I am going to be willing to lay the number there, as right now I'm seeing a lot of openers on this game, with Montana State being between about a 3.5 to a 4 point favorite. Total on the game is 134, and I did set my total 131.5. Montana State during the Big Sky tournament just got unseasonably hot from 3-point range, but this is a Montana State team that they actually do a really good job of being able to guard the 3-point arc when they're in a road/shoot court environment. For Montana State, they're a top 100 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and this is not the same Grambling team with regards to rebounding that we've seen in past years. This is a Grambling bunch that's outside the top 200 with regards to their overall rebound rate, and that's big because the main kryptonite that you got from Montana State, they're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball. In terms of percentage of their missed shots that they corral as an offensive rebound, it's a Grambling team that's been well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis all season long. They are a low-tempo team that has a pair of guys in Trevon, Michael Morton, along Contavious Dozier, who would able to give you about 25 points per contest. Morton is able to shoot about 37% from 3, but 13.5 turnovers per game, that's a little bit unsightly. Montana State does a little bit of a better job of being able to take care of the ball because they're built for tough. Robert Ford, 16 points, 7.5 boards, 3 assists. At 6 feet tall, he gives you 2.9 steals per contest. Shoots 42.5% from 3 for a Montana State team that they're shooting about 36.5% from 3-point. They're a top 75 team in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Eddie Turner down for what? Who comes in from Columbia, has been able to give you about 3.5 assists, 2 steals per contest. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this is a Montana State team that is a top 75 team in all of college basketball. Grambling has had a tough time taking care of the ball, and it's a Grambling team that, to their credit, they've been able to really step up in terms of their defense. If you're looking at regulation and regulation only, they have given up 66 points for fear in each of their last 3 games. It's a Montana State team that, even though things got nutty and harebrained out there in the Big Sky tournament, they still did a relatively solid job, giving up 71 or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. So I do think that you get a little bit of a lower scoring slog in this one. So my total of 131.5, looking at the under with Montana State, I'm going to lay up to 5 with them. So so I like them to get past Grambling. And then when Montana State goes up against Purdue, there's just no taking them. Giant of the earth, Zach Edey, is going to be able to take hold. Even if Braden Smith, who's been dealing with injury, is not able to be out there and is able to fully function in this game, I still think that it's going to be a case where Montana State will be up against it. I mean, maybe if Montana State's like catching 20 and Braden Smith is out of the fold, I'd be willing to entertain that. But this is not the time to get cute because we saw a 16 seed from the playing game win a game in the NCAA tournament last year against a 1 seed. I'm going to be advancing Purdue. How about if we hit that 8-9 matchup? This is going to be TCU versus Utah State. And right now with TCU, I'm finding them as about a 3 to a 3.5 point favorite, depending upon where you look. And with TCU, I'm willing to lay up to 3.5 with them. I've been very impressed by what I've been seeing from this team on the glass. They're a top 40 team with regards to their overall rebound rate. And I think that it's just going to be a little bit overwhelming in this ordeal. And it's a TCU team that's really cranked up the tempo. They are now a top 45 team in terms of total possessions per game. They go up against a unit in Utah State that is very great down low. In great Osabor, he's been able to give you about 15 points, 9 boards per contest. And with Osabor, he's been able to do a really good job of just being able to function very well as a just low post big man. He's got a little bit of versatility, and I do like what Darius Brown is able to do out there in the backcourt as well. Brown has been a nice facilitator for this Utah State team. He's able to give you about 6 assists to 2 turnovers per contest, but it just feels like this Utah State team has had the air coming out of the balloon for them, and right now we're seeing this total anywhere between about a 146.5 to a 148, and I think we've got a little bit too far. I'm going to be looking at the under. It is a TCU team that gives up more than 10 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home, but it's a Utah State team that they're only shooting about 33.5, 34% from 3-point range. Ian Martinez has been able to give you double figures, shoots relatively well from 3-point range, but TCU, I feel like they've been shooting a little bit above their skis all season long. Trey Tennyson, though, is someone I like. He comes up from Texas A&M. Corpus Christi has done a nice job being Obama from 3, and for TCU, you've got 3 separate guys that do give you at least 2.5 assists per game, so nice being able to just dole out the ball by committee by them, and it is a TCU team that, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they allow opponents to shoot just 32.3% from 3-point range in a road/church court environment. I could see this being a little bit of an up and down game, but sort of being one of those 40 minutes of HE double hockey sticks style sort of games, and I do think the TCU finds a way with their rebounding. Emmanuel Miller is able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. They go up against the Utah State team that's been pretty rock solid with regards to their overall rebounding, but I think that they're going to meet their match here. Utah State, with regards to their overall rebound rate this year, they're checking in about 67th in all of college basketball, but outside of Osabor, they don't necessarily have a ton. So I do like TCU in this spot. Did set them as a 4-point favorite, so I want to lay to 3.5, and looking at that total under as well. And now let's hit the Gonzaga versus McNeese game, which has captured pretty much everyone's attention in the 6 versus 11 matchup. And with Gonzaga, you're going to be finding them as a favorite in a lot of spots, right around about a 6.5. And it's a spot where I actually do like Gonzaga. I'm seeing this come down to a 5.5. Total is anywhere between 145.5 and 146.5, but I feel comfortable with Gonzaga in this spot, and the reason why I feel comfortable about Gonzaga, they have really been able to complete themselves towards the back half of the season. This is a 5-12 matchup, by the way. I think I called it the 6-11, but that said, with Gonzaga, you've got just so many guys. They're doing a nice job of being able to hit the boards. You've got Graham Ike, you've got Anton Watson. These 2 guys are able to combine for about 15 rebounds per game, and while McNeese, it looks very gaudy that they were able to win those 30 games, that they were able to get the job done time and time again. That win that they had against Michigan, I think we've got to dock that a little bit because our good friends Michigan, they weren't necessarily so tremendous this year. In Gonzaga, we always talk about it, they play a bunch of cream puffs in competition. You know what they did in February? They went to Rupp Arena and they won at Kentucky. That is very big. That speaks to me. You've seen Ryan Nembhard, who is one of the biggest transfer portal additions in all of college basketball, have his ups and downs throughout the season, but he's been able to play significantly better. He's someone that is able to supply the team with double figures. He's been able to get the offense up and running, as it's a Gonzaga team that's back in the top 10 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This is with them not even necessarily being an amazing 3-point shooting team, and with McNeese, they actually have been able to do a much better job of shutting down the 3-point arc when they've been on the road rather than at home, and I do like Shahada Wells. He's able to give you about 17.5 points per contest, and this is a McNeese team that they're going to be willing to slow things down. They're outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Christian Schulmate, he gives you 12 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. Will Wade has done a really good job of being able to get the team all hyped up. They are one of the best teams at taking the ball away in all of college basketball, but with Gonzaga, having those wise guards, having that veteran leadership like Nolan Hickman, who's able to give you 14 points per contest. You've got him and Watson, both shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. Gonzaga, having been able to overcome these teams like St. Mary's, San Francisco, were very defense-oriented and being able to just really rip them apart. I do think that Gonzaga finds a way to get past McNeese in this spot. And McNeese, I just feel like they haven't seen a team quite like Gonzaga all season long. Like I said, they were able to pull off that very nice win against Michigan towards the beginning part of the season, but when they had a step-up game against Louisiana Tech, they were unable to get the job done there, and this is very much a team that is going to be coming at them with those guys at EK along with Watson. So I'm going to be willing to lay with Gonzaga and advance them in my bracket. And in terms of this total, I did set mine more around 145.5, so right now we're seeing about 146.5. I'd be willing to take a look at that under as well. And then how about if we hit the 4-13 matchup of Sam Amford versus Kansas? Right now, Kansas is an 8.5 point favorite in a lot of spots, and total on this game is anywhere between 149.5 and 150.5. And I did set Kansas as a 6 point favorite. We should be seeing more of their main men out there in the fold, and this is one of these spots where I talked about it at the beginning. Sometimes you want to fill out your bracket a little bit differently rather than the way that you are going to be betting it. Like, I'm going to be taking the points with Samford. I'm not going to be taking the money line, but I advanced Samford in my bracket because you've got those question marks around Kansas. And could Kansas have Kevin McCullough, Hunter Dickinson be firing all cylinders? Yes, you are greatly rolling the dice there, and this is a handicap where you're subject to a little bit of change. When you've got your bracket, you have to turn it all in at the same time, and when you've got your handicap, you know what? You don't have to bet this quite yet. You can take a look to see, all right, is Kevin McCullough going to be out there? All right, is Hunter Dickinson going to be out there? Because this Kansas team is about as shallow as a kiddie pool with regards to their depth. You've been able to get good production out of Dwan Harris as point guard, but he really doesn't give you a lot of scoring. He only gives you 9 points per contest, and for a team that's dealing with not having a lot of depth, this is not a good matchup as they're going up against a Samford team that they're harebrained, they're crazy, they are wild. You got Anchor, who's able to do a very nice job. 16 points, 6 boards, shoots 44.5% from 3-point range. So nice they named him twice. As a matter of fact, for the Samford team, you've got out of your top 5 scorers, every one of them shooting at least 36% from 3-point range. AJ St. McCray is able to supply you with about 11 points per contest. Samford, a top 40 team with regards to total possessions per game. And Kansas has legitimately been a little bit better on defense rather than offense this season. You just haven't even seen those moments when you've had Hunter Dickinson along with Kevin McCullough being out there on the floor, and those are two guys that they combine for north of 35 points per game. It cannot be understated just how much they mean to this team. Dickinson, he's able to give you 10 rebounds per game, and for Samford, this is a team that where they really do go wrong is their 3-point shooting defense. If you can get to Samford, they are well outside the top 225 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but you really don't have great shooters for this team. Nicholas Timberlake, who came over from Towson, he has not brought sexy back. He's only shooting about 28.5% from 3. Kansas shooting as a collective 33% from the outside. Like I said, this is one where I'm going to be betting this a little bit differently than I'm going to fill out my bracket. I like Samford to be able to advance on my bracket. I'm playing it safe right now in terms of taking the 8.5 with Samford, and I'm probably going to be betting this right now just because I don't think that the 8.5 is going to be available for very long on Samford, so I'm going to be taking those points right away, subject to a little bit of variance with regards to handicapping based on the injury report for Kansas, but that said, I advanced Samford in my bracket, and I did set my total 152, as I do think that Samford is going to be able to get their up-tempo style. Right now, we're seeing that between a 149.5 to a 150, so I'm going to be taking the points with Samford, advancing them in my bracket, and looking at this total over as well. Now, let's hit the Oregon versus South Carolina game, and with South Carolina right now, we're finding them as about a 1.5 point favorite in this ordeal, and in this spot, anything less than 3, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Oregon. This Oregon bunch has been able to do a really good job all season long of just not turning the ball over in general, and right now in a lot of spots this has actually moved to a pick'em with a total between 132 to a 133, but that said, this South Carolina team has been horribly disrespected all season long, and what is very key for the South Carolina team, a guy by the name of Colin Murray Boyles. He was out due to, I believe it was mono towards the beginning part of the season. It's a big reason why he didn't play for like 7 or so games. This guy has been on an all-time heater. He has been able to do a nice job, give this team 7+ rebounds in 5 out of the team's last 6 games, double figures in pretty much each out of the last 5, has come out of nowhere, and it's a big reason why the team has been able to ascend towards back half of the season, going up against a Oregon team that they do a solid job down low, and Fali Dante has been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game, but you really don't get a lot of support down low. It's a South Carolina team that they don't do one thing great, but they're solid in so many different fronts. They're like 80th in points scored on a per possession basis, 80th in points allowed on a per possession basis. They're in the top 75 in terms of opponents' 3-point 3-point shooting percentage, but they're not necessarily excellent in any fronts. Oregon, you've got Jackson Shellstad in the backcourt along Jermaine Cuisinart. They're able to combine for about 26 points per contest. Both of these guys are able to dole out the ball, but Oregon, away from home, they allow opponents to shoot 36.3% from three. Michi Johnson is a nice go-to scorer for South Carolina. He's able to give you about 14 points per contest, and if there is one thing that South Carolina truly has been able to do great, take care of the ball. They only turn the ball for about 10.5 times per contest. That is a credit to their great point guard in Talon Cooper, north of 4 assists, so less than 1.5 turnovers per contest. It's an Oregon team that's getting hot at the right time, but I do question them a little bit, especially with having a few days of layoff going into the NCAA tournament as well. They've dealt with injuries all throughout the season. Guys like Jesse Zarzula, Nate Biddle that we thought were going to be big pieces for this team, they've had to really replace on the fly. And with Oregon only having the one guy down low and Mr. Dante, who's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game, I think by committee, guys like BJ Mack Truck and company get the job done for South Carolina. So did South Carolina as a 3.5-point favorite. I think this total's a little bit low because I do expect a close game. I do expect some late game fouling in South Carolina to be able to knock down a few threes. Set my total 133.5. So you're at the 132, 133. I do like this total over. I like South Carolina to be able to get the job done, advance, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number with them as well. How about if we hit this 4-13 matchup now? This is Akron versus Creighton, and with Creighton, you're finding them as a 12.5 to a 13-point favorite. Your total's between 139 and 140.5, and I did set my total 137.5 as this Akron team I think can give Creighton a little bit of pause, and this is another one of those games where I keep telling you, sometimes you want to fill out your bracket a little bit differently than how you're going to bet it. Like, I'm not going to be willing to take Akron outright on the money line with my bet. In terms of my bracket, though, I am advancing the 14 seed in Akron. I think that this could be a game where we see a whole bunch of chaos with an Akron team that has Enrique Freeman. He is the top rebounder in all of college basketball. 18 points, 13 rebounds, block and a half per contest, shoots 35% from three-point for an Akron team that they're a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. You've got Ali back in the fold. He was out for the first 10 games of the season. That was due to the fact that the NCAA had the two-time waiver rule that was going down. That was a relatively sticky spot, to say the least, for a lot of guys, but I do think that Akron has very much a puncher's chance to be able to get this done outright on the money line against a Creighton team that they just are a little bit of a high-variance team, and I was talking about the depth of Kansas. Why are we not talking about this with Creighton? I mean, if they were to open up a restaurant, they'd be called Five Guys because that's all that they play. I mean, I love Ryan Kalkbrenner. He's able to give you 2.5 blocks per contest. He, along with Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander, they'll give you 15 plus points. They'll give you 6 plus rebounds per game. And then you've been able to have, coming on strong, the Utah State transfer who's been able to do a nice job out there in the backcourt, being able to dole out the ball, being able to give you a bit of scoring, what have you, but at the same time, I do take a look at this Creighton team, and they're just not a team that forces any sort of ball pressure whatsoever. This will allow Akron to be able to get in their happy zone, and this is an Akron team that they don't necessarily have great guard play themselves. You've been able to have a few guys be able to give you about 2.5 assists per contest. You've been able to get good production out of guys like Greg Tribble, along with Sammy Hunter. They're shooting about 34-35% from three-point range, but I do take a look at this spot, and I think that this is a really good one for Akron to be able to play even up on the glass with them not being hurried up in terms of their offense. They're able to get into what they like. This is an Akron team that's very much defense-oriented, so this is a tough spot, in my opinion, for Creighton. I do like the under, so I might total 137.5, and like I said, I made Creighton the favorite with regards to my handicap, but I'm going to advance Akron. This is one where, once again, I will keep reminding you guys, fill out your bracket a little bit differently than you're going to place your bets, because I'm going to play it safe with the points with regards to my bet on Akron, but in terms of my bracket, I am advancing Akron. And now we're going to be hitting the 7 versus 10 matchup. This is the winner of Virginia versus Colorado State going up against Texas, and whoever wins in Virginia versus Colorado State, I am going to be advancing against Texas. This is a Texas team that has been highly suspect all season long. It's a Texas team that, away from home, they give up well north of 10 points more per 100 possessions than they do at home. It's been a Texas team that all season long has gotten some good production out of Max Abmas, but outside of Max Abmas, this backcourt, it is shaky to say the least, and whoever comes out, I do think is going to be able to provide good effort, and I do think that that team is going to be indeed Colorado State. I did set Colorado State in this matchup against Virginia as a 3.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the numbers with them, and as I'm doing this right now, you're finding Colorado State as a very small and modest favorite. You're finding them between a 1 to a 2 point favorite, totals between 118 to a 119.5, and I'm going to be willing to take a look at this total over. I know that a lot of people are saying, Virginia, last team in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but this Virginia team is very fraudulent with regards to their defense. If you look at the overall metrics in terms of just raw points allowed on a per possession basis. Virginia is number 9 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They give up 23.9 points more per 100 possessions in a road/shoot-score environment rather than at home. And this is just a textbook perfect matchup for Colorado State. Colorado State does not have a lot of rebounding. You do have a guy in Isaiah Stevens, though, who's been around the block, 5th-year senior. He's able to give you about 17.5 points. He's able to give you a few boards. Shoots north of 40% from three-point range. For Colorado State, that as a whole, they do shoot 36% from three-point range. Nico Clifford, along with the transfer in Joel Scott. These two guys have been able to give you about 13 rebounds per game, and that's big because Virginia, you've got Ryan Dunn who gets her done. He gives you about 2 blocks per contest. He gives you 6+ rebounds per game. He is the lone guy on the roster that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game. Virginia, well outside the top 240 with regards to rebound rate. They have not been generating the same amount of turnovers here in the back half of the season that they did in the front half, and that was really the lifeblood of their defense. Got a Colorado State team that's one of the best teams in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis as well. I think that this is a rough matchup for Virginia. I do think that Colorado State, a relatively slow tempo team themselves, they're able to get the job done here. I think that this is strong enough for Lake Felling, and like I said, Virginia, not the same defense when they're away from home, so I like the over. I like Colorado State to advance in that game, and I like them to advance past Texas as well. So we are going to be rolling with this, and also do be mindful that these teams in the play-in matchups, the first 4, in all but 1 year, they have advanced past the round of 64 in all but 1 of them. So do be mindful of that as well. And then how about if we hit this final region as we now go to North Carolina's region where they're going to be facing off against the play-in. This is not the time to get cute here, by the way, as they're going to be playing against the winner of Howard versus Wagner. And in terms of the Howard versus Wagner game, you're finding Howard as a 3-point favorite. Totals between 125 and 127.5. I set my total at 134. I'm actually going to be really looking at the over in this spot because you do have a Howard team that they're looking to run in and gun it now. You've got a Wagner team that they are looking to pound teams into oblivion. With Wagner, in terms of their total possessions per game out of 362 Division I teams, they are 360th. Got a Howard team that they really give it up, though. They're outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But if the name Seth Downs sounds familiar, he was the Ivy League Player of the Year in 2018. He's literally going for his doctorate over at Howard right now, and he's been able to do a nice job giving this team 15+ points per contest. And this is a Howard team that they just find a way to be able to get points. They foul quite a bit, but they find their way to the free throw line a lot as well. They do go up against a Wagner team that is going to be able to take away the 3 ball from them a little bit. Wagner, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they are 10th in all of college basketball. This is a Howard team that they aren't necessarily so great with that regard. This Howard bunch, they are 187th in all of college basketball, but with Wagner, even though they're very slow and they don't really shoot it well, they shoot about 40% from the floor. This is a Wagner bunch that they actually do a very solid job of not turning the ball over. They're a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. You've got someone in Melvin Council who's been able to give the team double figures, and now they are shooting about 34% or so from 3-point, so they're not an objective disaster there. But with Howard, you've also been able to get around Seth Downs, a pair of guys that have been able to combine for about 30.5 points per contest. In Bryce Harris, you're able to throw in there as well Marcus Dockery. Dockery has been able to shoot 41% from 3. Harris is able to shoot 39% from distance as well. Howard turns the ball over about 15.5 times per contest, but this is not a Wagner team that's going to be going out there and is generating a bunch of turnovers themselves. They only get about 6 steals per game, and now I do think that they're going to be able to have Avieta Esquera do a relatively solid generating turnovers as well. And keep in mind, if you do take the over in this spot, you've got the benefit of late game fouling in overtime as well. This is a Howard team that they've just been able to score at will all season long. This is a Howard bunch that they have gotten past the 70-point plateau in all but one of their games since February 5th. So I do like the over in this spot. And with Howard, I did set them as a 4-point favorite. Be mindful, Wagner down to 7 scholarship players in this game as well. They have been dealing with a whole bunch of injuries, and regardless of if it is Howard versus Wagner, not the time to get cute. Please do advance North Carolina. You've got Armando Bacot. You've also got Harrison Ingram combined for 19.5 rebounds per game. North Carolina, top 40 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Very complete team. Whenever they're going up against, they should be a relatively sizable favorite. Now, if you could get Howard catching 22 points or something like that, I'd be willing to take the 22, but please do advance North Carolina in your bracket. And now let's hit that 8-9 matchup. This is going to be Michigan State versus Mississippi State, and right now Michigan State a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite. Totals between 127.5 and 129, and I'm going to be willing to go with Mississippi State. I know that it's not wise to fade Tom Izzo and March, but I've got to look at the metrics, and the metrics just tell me that this Mississippi State team is a better team. They have been a top 20 team in terms of their rebound rate, and I'm just not a fan of Manny Sissoko. Maybe I'm just a hater here, but that said, he's been able to give the team about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, and I just don't know how Michigan State holds up on the glass. It is a Mississippi State team that is outside the top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I just factor that to having to play against Alabama, having to play against Kentucky, Kentucky, a whole bunch of harebrained teams, and I think once they get outside the SEC, it's actually going to be much more favorable for them going up against a Michigan State team that has a nice go-to score, and Ty Walker is able to give you about 19.5 points per contest. Mississippi State is certainly not the same team with regards to their offense. They are a bunch of, they're turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, but Josh Hubbard has become a nice go-to scorer for this Mississippi State team as well. Mr. Hubbard has been able to give you 17 points, shoots about 36% from 3-point range. If you do have trepidation with Mississippi State in a nip and tuck game, they do shoot just 67% at the free throw line, but Tolu Smith, he's able to give you 8.5 rebounds per game, and as a matter of fact, for Mississippi State, you've got essentially 4 separate guys that do give you at least 5 rebounds per game. Charles Matthews has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest as well. It's a Michigan State team that they do a nice job of not turning the ball over, but again, with Michigan State, they've got some pretty demonstrative home and road splits themselves. For Michigan State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are giving up north of 15 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, actually closer to 14.3 points more, but still, that's a big split. Meanwhile, for Mississippi State, just 2.6 points more per 100 possessions away from home. I think that they own the glass. I think that they own the game. I like Mississippi State in this spot, and I did set my total 128. I did think that this is going to be close enough for late game following. I'm seeing between 127.5 to 129. Personally, I would rather take that 129 under rather than the 127.5 over, and going to be willing to ride with Mississippi State outright on the money line. Now let's hit that 5 versus 12 matchup. This is Old St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon, and right now St. Mary's in a lot of spots, you're going to be finding them in that pocket of about a 5 or so point favorite, and total is one of the lower ones that you're going to be finding out there on the board. That is about 129 to 131, depending upon where you look at. Circumstance where I'm going to be looking at the under. I did set my total at a 129.5. You've got a Grand Canyon team that has been just absolutely tremendous on defense. They're a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. When they're not getting dodge balls thrown at them, they've been able to do a nice job on that front. And this is another one of these games where I'm going to be advancing the underdog, even though I'm only going to take the points and not them outright on the money line with regards to my bet with Grand Canyon. This team has been able to do a tremendous job on the glass, and really both of these teams have been. You've got a Grand Canyon team that's a top 30 team with regards to rebound rate. St. Mary's is number 1 in all of college basketball in that regard. The reason why I advanced Grand Canyon on my bracket, though, is because they've got the best player out there on the floor, in my opinion, the most complete player, Tyon Grant Foster. Grant Foster has been able to supply you with 19 points, 6+ boards. He throws in there a block and a half, steal and a half per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Augustus Mirasolinas, along with also Aiden Mahaney. These two guys have been rock solid for a St. Mary's team that actually has been, in a lot of cases, better on the road rather than at home. They're a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis themselves. But I look at Grand Canyon, and the way that they've been able to just utilize a lot of their depth has been so good as well. You've got someone in Javon Blackshear. Last year was a double-figure scorer for them. He's only given them like 4.5 to 5 points per game, but has been a knockdown deadly shooter, shooting about 43.5% from 3-point range. Gabe McLaughlin, Rayshawn Harrison, they combine for about 27 points per contest, with McLaughlin giving 7.5 boards, shoots 40% from 3-point range. And for St. Mary's, they have been dealing with a little bit of an injury down low. Joshua Jefferson, he has been out since the 10th of February. I believe that he's going to be out of the fold for this game as well. Alex Zusas is someone that I do like. He's able to give you about 10 points per contest, but I just take a look at the pedigree of this Grand Canyon team, a team that has been having Bryce Drew do a really good job of coaching them up. He knows something about March moments. I do think the Grand Canyon finds a way to be able to persevere. I like their offense a little bit more than St. Mary's. Like I said, with my bets, I'm only going to be willing to take the 5 that I'm seeing right now with Grand Canyon, but did advance them on my bracket. Did set my total 129.5 as well, so seeing a lot of 130 plus. Also going to be taking a look at this total under as well. How about if we hit the 4-13 matchup? This is Alabama versus Charleston, and for Charleston, you're going to be getting them as an underdog of 10 points. Totals anywhere between 170 and 172.5. I did set my total at a 169. You've got a pair of teams that they like to play up tempo. You've got a pair of teams that they like to run it and gun it. But when it comes to just having unfamiliar surroundings, I do think that that's going to bog down the total a little bit. And sometimes when you get a pair of fast teams, sometimes they look to deviate from one another. And I do think that for Charleston, they're a little bit of a lesser version of Alabama. I do think that they do enough to be able to hold in there, though. I did set my line at 7, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Charleston, but I'm going to be advancing in my bracket Alabama. With Alabama, you've got, in my opinion, the best scorer out there on the floor. That would be Mark Fears with 20 plus points per contest. Well, you've got a Charleston team that you've got a lot of guys that they just contribute to the cause, for a little bit of a lack of a better term. With Charleston, you've got someone like a Rain Smith who's able to give you 12 points per contest. Ben Burnham, who's able to give you 13 points. Ante Brozovic, he throws in there 12 points. He's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. I absolutely love the fact that CJ Fulton has been a pass first guy. He only gives you like 4 to 5 points per contest, but he's able to throw in there 4 assists per game. And for Charleston, they really do play a clean style of basketball. They only turn the ball over 10 times per contest, despite being up tempo. But this is an Alabama team that is a top 5 team in terms of of points scored on a per possession basis. Both of these teams have truly been giving it up with regards to their defense. This is a College of Charleston team that, with regards to their opponent's three-point shooting percentage, they're about 170th in all of college basketball. Alabama well outside the top 150 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But for Alabama, they're 61st in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that's misleading. They allow opponents to shoot 28% from three-point range at home. That balloons up to 36.5% in a roadside neutral court venue. I do think, like I said, the neutral court environment is going to bog this total down a little bit, so I'm going to be looking at the under of Alabama. I did set them as a 7-point favorite, so we'll take the 10 with Charleston, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under as well. Now let's hit the New Mexico versus Clemson game. This, I believe, is the 6 versus 12 matchup, and right now in New Mexico, you're finding them in a lot of spots as about a 1.5-point favorite, even though they are the lower seeded team in this one. Total, you're going to be getting that anywhere in the pocket of a 149.5 to a 150.5, and I really wouldn't want to lay anything more than about a 2.5 here. I did set New Mexico as a 2.5-point favorite, but if you're willing to get a 2 out there, I'm seeing this move to a lot of 2.5s as well. But if you're able to get a 2, I'm going to be willing to lay New Mexico, and I'm going to be advancing New Mexico on my bracket. New Mexico did not have a lot of their pieces even in the fold until the back half of non-conference play because they were dealing with injuries to Jalen House along Jamal Mashburn Jr. So these guys have been able to really be able to build as the season goes along, while a lot of these teams have been able to plateau. Meanwhile, you got a Clemson unit that they do a relatively solid job on the glass. They're a top 55 team in all of college basketball in that regard, but I mean, so is this New Mexico team. You've got Nelly Jr. Joseph. You've also got in the fold a guy that I like in JT Toppin that combined for about 16 to 17 rebounds per game. It's a New Mexico team that does a great job of being able to generate turnovers, and there's a big sort of, I guess you could call it, narrative out there that this New Mexico team, they just can't play on the road or anything like that. You take a look at the metrics and you take a look at the advanced numbers, and this New Mexico team has been just fine when they've been on the road. New Mexico, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 51st in all of college basketball. They only average about 2.5 points fewer per possessions away from them rather than when they are at home. You've got a Clemson team, meanwhile, that is 29th in the country with this regard. They average right around about 8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home. You've got Joe Girard, who shoots it really well from three-point range, but this New Mexico team, they've done a nice job of being able to guard the arc. Meanwhile, it's a Clemson team that they do leave something to be desired with that regard. Clemson, well outside the top 125 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this has been a New Mexico team that all season long has done a nice job being able to cut off that arc, which is really a lifeblood for this Clemson team. New Mexico, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 24th in all of college basketball. So I'm going to be willing to advance this New Mexico team in my bracket, and when it comes to the total in this spot, I do think that that's a little bit intriguing as well. Set mine at a 150.5, so as long as you're able to find 150 or less, I do like this total over, and I do like this New Mexico team to be able to survive and advance. Now let's take a look at the 3-4 matchup. This is old Colgate versus Baylor, and right now I am not too bullish on this Colgate team, and when it comes to Baylor, I'm going to be willing to lay the number here. Right now we're finding them as a 13.5 to a 14-point favorite. Total's anywhere between 138 to 138.5, and for Baylor, I'm willing to lay up to 14.5 with them. Did set them as a 15-point favorite. This is just not the same bunch that we've seen in Colgate in past years. For Colgate, they do a nice job of being able to cut off the three-point arc. They're a top 75 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. They've really also slowed themselves down. This team is well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but I did set my total at 141. You've got a Baylor team that is one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, and if you took a look at this Colgate team in non-conference play versus conference play, they just didn't really have a whole bunch of success, and I do think that that is something that you need to be very mindful of, because with this Colgate team, they don't necessarily have a lot of size. You've got Keegan Records down low, who's able to do a solid job supplying you with about 6 or 7 rebounds per game, but this Baylor team, despite the fact that Yves Messi, Jalen Bridges are the only guys that really give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, they're a top 50 team in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, speaking to my point of Colgate just really being able to pile up against bad competition, they were in non-conference play 156th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now they've been able to ascend to the top 75, really beating up on one of the worst conferences in all of college basketball. It is a Baylor team that they do give up as well, north of 14 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home, but Ray J. Jennings has been able to do a really solid job of being able to run this offense, giving you about 6.5 assists per contest. On the flip side, you do have a guy in Braden Smith, gives you 12 points, 5 boards, 5.5 assists per game, but I mean, guys like Ryan Moffitt or company are just not the supporting pieces that he is used to and has had in past years. So, circumstance where with Baylor set them as a 15-point favorite, I'm going to be advancing them in my bracket. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And in terms of total, I set mine at a 141, so I'm also going to be looking at this total over as well. Now, let's hit the 7 versus 10 matchup. This is Nevada versus Dayton. Right now, we're finding Dayton in a lot of spots as anywhere between a 1-point favorite to a 1-point underdog. This is one where it's relatively on that number, and in terms of total, seeing it at a 136.5, and at a 136.5, that is my buy point on the under, and I'm going to be willing to advance Nevada. I did set Nevada as a 2-point favorite, so getting them as either a 1-point favorite or a 1-point underdog, going to be looking at them willing to lay the point, and if you get them as an underdog, just an outright money line play, as for Nevada, they just do a nice job not missing assignments and doing the little things. This team is in the top 25 in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and Nevada all season long has been one of the best perimeter defensive teams in all of college basketball. Really, both of these teams have. You've got a Dayton squad that, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they've been a top 50 team all season long. They've got Deron Holmes. They've got Nate Santos. These two guys, they provide 14 rebounds per game. And Holmes, he should be playing in the NBA next year. I mean, he's been that good. And for Dayton, to their credit, they allow opponents to shoot just 31.1% from three-point range in a roadside court setting, but for Nevada, 37th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and that's the lifeblood of this Dayton team. This Dayton bunch, they shoot as a collective nearly 40% from three-point range. Kobe Bryant, Kobe Elvis, they've been able to enter the building. They shoot north of 40% from three-point range, but the injury to Javon Bennett is something that you do want to note in terms of this Dayton team, as well as they've been dealing with him being in and out of the fold, and without his leadership and his ability to be able to facilitate offense, that's been really hurting this team. We saw them be a little bit stagnant against Duquesne. We saw them have their issues in that game when they were taking on Loyola Chicago as well. So, I mean, those are games that they do concern me a little bit. It's a Dayton team that overall only turns the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, but with Nevada having Dick Davidson down low, he's able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. He's not quite what you're going to be able to get out of Deron Holmes, and Nevada does not have the same rebound rate as the Dayton team does, but they do a nice job not allowing you to generate second chances. Meanwhile, you've got Jared Lucas, who I think is going to be the top scorer in this game. He's able to give you 18 points, shoots 40% from 3, and then Keenan Blackshear, he had 6'6", is able to give you like 5 boards, 5 assists, 15 points per contest. Good overall versatility for a Nevada team that they just do the little things well, and I do think that the little things do a big thing here. I'm advancing Nevada in the bracket, and then we've got one last game to be able to take a look at. This is the 2 versus 15 matchup between Arizona and Long Beach State. I am certainly going to be advancing Arizona in terms of a bracket, but I do think that we've gone a little bit too lofty in terms of this number right now with Long Beach State. You're finding them between a 19 to a 20-point underdog. Total is between 161 and 161.5, and with Long Beach State, I think that they continue to fight for their coach. Coach Dan Monson was fired prior to the start of the team's Big West tournament run, and it was a mutual parting of ways, but let's call it what it is. He got fired, but they allowed him to coach it out. The team won their conference tournament, and now here they are in the NCAA tournament, and you got Traore squared, as Lucina Traore, he's more of a low post presence, gives you about 11 points, 10 rebounds per game. Abakar Traore, 4 assists, 8 rebounds, 14 points per game. Now, Marcus Siones would like to see him be a little bit more efficient. He only shoots about 30% from three-point range. For lack of a better term, he's a chucker. He's able to give you about 17 points per contest, but it's not going to be pretty along the way. And you do have an Arizona team that they just do experience quite a bit of a drop-off with regards to their overall metrics when they're away from home rather than when they're at home. It's a Arizona team that is a top 30 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but this defense very much does go sideways when they're on the road. Arizona, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are giving up about 15 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. It's an Arizona bunch that as well has been one of your top rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. Umar Ballo, he's been able to do a very rock solid job. He's able to give you 10 boards per contest, but Caleb Love, he could be a little bit hit or miss. I like what Pell Larson is able to bring to the table. Shoots north of 40% from three-point range. And Love has been so much better this year than he has been in past years. But I do think that for Long Beach State, they're going to be able to do a solid job holding up here. Now, the biggest trepidation that you do have for Long Beach State, they are about 264th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got an Arizona team that they do allow opponents to shoot about 35% from three-point range in a roadside court setting, but that's not not really the game for Long Beach State. You've got A.J. George who's able to supply a few points, so I do think that as a result, you're going to see a little bit of a lower scoring game. I still think that you get an explosive amount of points, but set my total more to where I'd be willing to take it over if you get down to more like a 156 half. So here out of 161, looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Long Beach State, but in my bracket, I'm going to be picking Arizona, and we have run through the round of 64 games of the NCAA Tournament. Coming up next, let's dive into the rest of the bracket, give you guys my Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4, and National Champion right here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. All right, we are through the round of 64. Got you guys betting angles and got you guys my straight up picks for my bracket there. Now, not going to have any betting angles quite yet. We don't have any lines for the round of 32, Sweet 16, what have you. Would be very foolish to try to speculate because a lot can happen along the way. But going to get you guys the rest of my bracket, get you guys all situated here. Let's waste no more time. Let's go back up to the East region. Let's start out with this round of 32 game between UConn and Florida Atlantic. I've got UConn being able to survive and advance. Flat out Florida Atlantic just is not playing enough defense. They're well outside the top 140 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And I mean, it's a Florida Atlantic team that has been so different with the way that they guard the arc when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. Florida Atlantic, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage at home, 30.9%, 36% in a roadside neutral court setting. You've got a UConn team that's really hunkering down in all facets of basketball, top 15 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they do allow opponents to shoot about 35.5% from three-point range away from home, and this is a Florida Atlantic team that has John L. Davis, is able to shoot north of 40% from three, does a nice job, be able to supply offense. I don't think that it's up here. I like UConn to be able to survive and advance, and I do think that they're going to be playing against Auburn. Auburn is taking on San Diego State in my round of 32, and with San Diego State, I just don't know if you have enough scoring pop from the guards to be able to hold in there. As San Diego State, I mean, they're an incredible three-point shooting defense, top 25 team in all of college basketball. Jaden Ledee is able to give you 20 points, 8 rebounds. I think that he can actually provide a speed bump to our good friend in Gianni Broome, who's doing a nice job of cleaning up, but I mean, outside of that, you don't have necessarily a ton down low. San Diego State lacking a lot of offensive pizzazz. Meanwhile, for Auburn, this team is just a total package right now. Top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. You've been able to get really good production recently. Jalen Williams is able to give you 12.5 points, a little bit of a joker player. And now for Auburn, the element that was missing for them last year was that three-point shooting. Of their top 4 scorers, 3 of them shoot at least 40% from 3. All 4 of them, that includes Gianni Broome and his versatility, shoot at least 36% from 3. They do this all while generating a bunch of turnovers themselves on defense, and they only turn the ball over 10.5 times on offense. So I do like this Auburn team to be able to survive and advance. I've got them going to the Sweet 16, and then we've got BYU versus Illinois in the 3-6 matchup. I'm going to be going with Illinois. BYU is going to be done in by the fact that they just rely too much on the 3. BYU takes north of 50% of their field goal attempts from 3-point range, and for Illinois, even though the defense it has went into the abyss, and this is an Illinois team that away from home, they do allow opponents to shoot 36% from 3-point range. It's a BYU team that they themselves allow opponents to shoot 35.3% from 3-point range when they're away from home. You've got TJ Sharon Shannon, who's been able to do a nice job, give you 22 plus points per contest, and the overall depth of rebounding, I think, is going to match and exceed that of BYU. One of the big things for BYU is that they've got so much versatility out there on the floor, what have you, but having to go up against someone like a Coleman Hawkins, who stands 6'10", who's able to bury about 38% of his threes. Quincy Guerrier, who shoots 39% from 3-point range. These two guys give you north of 7 rebounds per game. I think that that's going to take it out of them. Someone like a Marcus Domask, who's able to give you 13 points, 5 boards, a few dimes. I think that that's going to be rough as well. It is a BYU team that does take quite a bit of a fall with regards to offense when they're away from home as well, rather than when they are at home. For BYU, they've been averaging about 13 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. And for Illinois, number 2 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home. I do think that Illinois finds a way, gets the job done. They go to the Sweet 16, and I think that they're going to be playing against Iowa State. Iowa State is facing off against Drake in the 2-10 matchup. For this Drake team, they do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball, but I think think that comes to an end against their intrastate foe in Iowa State, a team that is number 2 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Drake, while I do love Tucker DeVries, what he's able to provide with his 21 points, 6+ boards per contest, for Drake, I think that they're just going to have a tough time with a backcourt duo of Keyshawn Gilbert along Taman Lipsby. Both of these guys have been able to combine for about 28 points per contest. You've got so many great guards on the team, and while Darnell Brody is a really nice low post presence, Iowa State has been able to get a little bit more rebounding recently as well. I do think that Drake is actually going to be able to give Iowa State a little bit of a fight. I think that this is one of the harder matchups that Iowa State could get. I do think that could be a little bit of a nip and tuck game, but in the end, I've got Iowa State advancing in my bracket. How about if we go down to North Carolina versus Mississippi State? With North Carolina and Mississippi State, I've got North Carolina being able to go out there, get the job done. With Mississippi State, they do a nice job in terms of rebounding, but North Carolina is able to match it. North Carolina, top 25 team in terms of their rebound rate with Harrison Ingram, Armando Bacot, and with Mississippi State, this is just not an efficient offense to be able to get the job done against a North Carolina team that they really do both. They're not just a great defense, but they're also a team that in terms of being able to put the ball in the basket, points scored on a per possession basis, number 34 in all of college basketball. Josh Hubbard is a nice scorer with 17 points per contest. RJ Davis is a different scorer with about 21.5 points per game. And for Mississippi State, outside of Hubbard, you just don't have a lot of three-point shooting options. Meanwhile, it's a North Carolina team that they do a nice job of being able to guard both inside and outside. For North Carolina, it's a top 45 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They don't necessarily generate a lot of turnovers, but they play really good in-your-face defense. I think that that's going to translate, carry over, and North Carolina only giving up about 3 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. So we've got North Carolina being able to advance to the Sweet 16, and they're going to face off against Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon has Alabama in that round of 32 matchup, and for Alabama, it just comes back to the fact that they're not playing a lick of defense right now. Alabama, well outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Alabama's three-point shooting defense is so misleading. 62nd in all of college basketball, my rear end. In a roadside shoot court environment, they allow opponents to shoot 36.5% from three-point range. That goes down to 28% when they're at home. At Grand Canyon, they do a nice job tightening up the screws as well. Opponents away from home, they shoot 30.6% from three-point range against them. I think the Tyon Grant Foster is going to be able to match and exceed what Mark Sears is able to do in this game with all the bigs down low for Grand Canyon and their rebound rate. I think that they find a way to get the job done. Grant Nelson has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game for Alabama, but outside of him, you don't really have a ton else. So I do like Grand Canyon as the 12 seed to survive, advance to the Sweet 16, and I like the 11 seed in New Mexico versus Baylor to survive and advance. I like New Mexico. It's a Baylor team that has really been struggling with their defense when they've been away from home. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this is a bunch that they see their defense increase by about 8.5 to 9 points more per 100 possessions surrendered. Meanwhile, for New Mexico, once again, they travel much better than I think a lot of people anticipate. They do such a good job on the glass with JT Toppin being able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Is able to pop it from three-point range, even when you need to rely upon Mustafa Amzil, the transfer from Dayton. He's able to do a pretty solid job there. It's a Baylor team that they've got quite a bit of depth in terms of the backcourt and the frontcourt. You don't have as much of it. Baylor is actually a number 19 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but you don't have guys like Anelli Jr. Joseph that are able to do a nice job clogging up the rim. It's a New Mexico team that, if you look at their rebound rate away from home, it's actually a top 15 mark in all of college basketball. I do think that with Jalen House, Jamal Mashburn Jr., coupled with also Donovan Dent doing such a good job being able to generate between the three of them north of 4 steals per contest, they're going to be able to cause Baylor to be a little bit out of sorts. And Jacoby Walter, while he is this top scorer for Baylor, he's not been able to shoot it well from three-point range. So I'm going to be having this New Mexico team survive and advance, and I think that they take on another Mountain West team. I've got Nevada over Arizona. I have not liked what I've seen recently out of Arizona. It's a little bit of a heat check team that they just aren't the same defense/offense when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. You go up against a Nevada team that has been one of the best in all of college basketball, being able to guard the three-point arc. Arizona, 12th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they do score 13.6 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. Arizona, with Umar Ball and company, they're going to have an advantage down low, but this Nevada team, even though they might not get a lot of second chances with regards to offensive rebounds, they do a nice job not allowing you to get those second chances as well. I think that Nevada is going to go to basics. They're going to be able to do a nice job being able to take care of the ball. That is going to be just enough for them to be able to get the job done against an Arizona team that they were high-flying towards the beginning part of the season, but their offense has been sputtering recently. So we are going to be going with that 10-11 Sweet 16 matchup. Now, but if we go back to the upper right part of the board, This is Houston versus Texas A&M. Just not enough offense for Texas A&M. They are outside the top 320 in terms of three-point shooting percentage. We've got a Houston team that they are going to be able to match what Texas A&M is going to be able to do on the glass. With Houston, Jabal Shedd has been so terrific. He's been able to give the team double figures in 11 out of the last 12 games. You've got Javier Francis, who does such a nice job on the glass. And for Texas A&M, while you've got so many rebounding options, you just don't have the guys who are able to put the ball in the bucket. With Wade Taylor just having to go into inferno mode time and time again, I think that Houston is going to be able to take him away. That's going to make it a long night for a Texas A&M team that, to their credit, they don't turn the ball over much like Houston, but when you just flat out can't shoot, that's a bit of an issue. And for Houston, top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So I've got Houston in the Sweet 16. I've got them facing James Madison. In the Duke versus James Madison game, I've got James Madison being able to pull it off. Both of these teams do a relatively solid job of being able to take care of the ball, but I do think that a little bit of confusion this time of year can prove to be very, very costly on a 48-hour turnaround. I don't know if Duke is going to be prepared for what James Madison is going to be throwing at them. James Madison, I do think, can do a relatively solid job on the glass, even though they don't have quite as much size as, say, Kyle Filipowski, Mark Mitchell, and company. You've got TJ Bickerstaff, who's able to give you 8 rebounds per game. This is a James Madison team that I think that they're going to be able to turn over, a Duke team that has been able to do a very solid job of not turning the ball over. It's a Duke team that, when they're away from home, they do allow opponents to shoot north of 34% from three-point range. Meanwhile, James Madison, they just seem to elevate their play whenever they go up against a better opponent, for one, and for two, they are number 2 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So while you've been able to get a lot in the backcourt, as Darius Proctor has been that main facilitator, meanwhile, Jeremy Roach has been able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. McCain has been a very good three-point shooter for this team as well. I think that James Madison is able to lock down the arc. They're able to do a halfway decent job on the glass. That'll be enough to find a way to get the job done and get to the Sweet 16. And in the Sweet 16, on the lower half of that region, it is Texas Tech going up against Kentucky, and I've got Texas Tech advancing. I recognize that Texas Tech has not been the defense that we were hoping for, while outside the top 80 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And to the credit of Kentucky, the one thing that they've been able to do a okay job of on defense is being able to guard the three-point line, but this Texas Tech team does a really nice job of being able to operate inside. Darion Williams, Warren Washington, they combine for about 14.5 rebounds per game. Washington, more of a back-to-the-basket true 7-footer. Meanwhile, Williams, he's at 6'6", really nice just in terms of being a little bit of, for lack of a better term, a joker player. You're able to play him inside out. He's able to just man so many things out there on the floor. And then you've got someone like a Kerwin Walton, who's a nice designated three-point shooter, but also does a nice job of being able to lock things down on the defensive side of things as well. For Kentucky, while they do have so much star power, you've got Aaron Bradshaw, you've got Big Z down low. These guys have been rock solid. They don't necessarily play to their size, for lack of a better term. I would like to see them be a little bit more assertive, block a few more shots. They just have not been able to do so. For Kentucky, they don't turn the ball over, but I do think that Texas Tech going to be able to do just enough on the defensive side of things and is able to guard the arc just enough to be able to pull this game out. It's a Texas Tech team that, with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they're currently checking in right around about 74th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a Kentucky team that, once again, to their credit, that's really the one thing that they've been able to do on defense, but they're about 101st with that regard, allowing opponents to shoot north of 34% from three. Pops 96. Joe Toussaint, I think, take care of the ball, and they take care of business against Kentucky. And in terms of their Sweet 16 matchup, I do think that they are going to be facing up against Florida in the old Florida versus Marquette matchup. I'm going to go with Florida just because I don't know how close to 100% Tyler Kolek is, and even if Tyler Kolek is totally 100%, got a Marquette team that's still well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Marquette does a nice job of being able to generate turnovers, and that is a little bit of an issue for this Florida team, but Florida, despite shooting about 33.5% from three, they're a top 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are dealing with an injury to Micah Hanglon. We saw that go down on Sunday, but still, you got Tyrese Samuel is able to give you 8.5 rebounds per game. Zion Pullen has been able to do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. Now, I do like what Cam Jones has been able to provide from three-point range for Marquette, but it's also a Marquette team that they're only shooting about 35 or so percent from three-point range. It is a Florida team that they do allow north of 35% three-point shooting away from home with their perimeter defense, but Marquette also allows opponents to shoot about 34% from the outside in Florida, one of the best teams at finding a way of getting to the free throw line. I do think that they're going to get Marquette in foul trouble, find a way to be able to get this game physical, and find a way to be able to get the job done. And then you got Purdue versus TCU as we go down to the lower right part of the bracket. And for Purdue, I do think that they dispatch TCU. Now, TCU, I think, could actually give Purdue a very good run for their money. TCU, one of the best teams with regards to rebound rate in all of college basketball. They're relatively deep, but for Purdue, out of their top 8 scores, some of them do shoot above 36% from three-point range. that includes Zach Edey, who's actually shooting 50% from three-point range, 1 of 2 from distance, but I do think that Zach Edey going to be a little bit too much for a TCU team that they get in trouble in terms of turning the ball over. They turn the ball over north of 13 times per contest for Purdue. This is a team that's outside the top 50 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but Purdue also does a nice job locking it down from three-point range. They allow opponents away from home to shoot just 31.8% from three-point range. Meanwhile, TCU, away from home, they do allow opponents to shoot just 32.5% from distance as well. They've done a nice job on that front, but I do feel like a year older and wiser for Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith is going to do them a lot of good. That experience, I think, is going to be so paramount here as Purdue in a game that I think is going to be relatively close. They do find a way to get past TCU, though. If I'm looking at a upset in the 1 versus 9/8 matchup, that probably would be the one that would be most entertaining to me. And then we go 5 versus 13, Sam Iamford going up against Gonzaga. While Sam Iamford, I do think is going to cause a little bit of havoc to Gonzaga. This is a Gonzaga team that they're right at home playing up tempo for Gonzaga. They're turning the ball over less than 10 times per contest. It's a Samford team that they are actually halfway decent down low, but this is a Samford team that they can really be had from the outside. They do allow opponents to shoot 33.9% from three-point range. That's outside the top 170 nationally. Meanwhile, it's a Gonzaga unit that has been much better on defense this season, allows opponents to shoot only about 33% from three-point range away from home, and that's big because Samford, they do shoot as collective nearly 40% from three-point range. Rylan Jones, who comes over from Utah and Utah State, he's been able to give the team about 5 assists per contest. You got Encore, who's been able to do a really good job of providing good versatility in general, but when you've got a pair of guys that are able to provide a combined 15 rebounds per game and Graham Ike, Anton Watson, and shoot from 3 the way that they do, I think that it's just a little bit of doomsday there, so I'm going to be willing to advance Gonzaga to the Sweet 16, and then I'm also going to be willing to take a battle of SEC schools in the Sweet 16. I've got South Carolina and Tennessee doing battle, as I've got South Carolina getting past Akron. Akron pulls off that upset against Creighton, but Enrique Freeman, even though he's rock solid down low for Akron, just South Carolina having the holes greater than some of its parts approach, being such a complete team, going up against an Akron unit that I do have a few question marks in terms of the backcourt. You just have not been able to get a lot of facilitation out of someone like Caleb Thornton, who's been leading the way with about 3 assists per contest for South Carolina, having Tavon Cooper give you 4 assists, less than 1.5 turnovers per game, and this team be so clean and fluid with regards to all their motions. I think that is going to be big, so I do like South Carolina there. And then Tennessee versus playing winner of Virginia versus Colorado State, which I do think that's going to be Colorado State. I do think that Tennessee gets by Dalton Knecht. He is going to be able to rip apart both of those defenses that do allow quite a bit from three-point range. Tennessee is going to be able to win the rebound battle against both of those teams. Neither really stands, in my opinion, too much of an opportunity. So we've got our Sweet 16 set. Now let's go back up to the upper right part of the bracket. It's UConn versus Auburn in the Sweet 16, and I've got Auburn. I feel like this was like the worst matchup en route to the Final Four that UConn could have received, and they received it. It's an Auburn team that I've been just talking about how complete they are. Top 15 in the country in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. And G&I Broome up against Donovan Clingan, I think that G&I Broome is actually able to win that matchup. He's able to block shots. He's able to do a nice job on the glass. He's able to step outside, unlike Clingan. Now, Alex Caravan, he's got that very good versatility for this UConn team, but just look at the way that this Auburn team has seemingly 2 of everything out there in the backcourt. You've been able to get such good production out of someone like Trey Donaldson. Now, they don't quite compare to Cam Spencer, Tristan Newton. Both guys give you 15 points per contest. Spencer is shooting north of 44% from three-point range. Newton is able to give you about 7 boards, 5 assists. He can go off for a triple-double on any given moment. You don't have a guy that's like a triple-double threat, but Jalen Williams has good versatility. Denver Jones has become a nice designated three-point shooter for the team as well. Heck, Dylan Cardwell down low, he's able to give you a block and a half, and he shoots 40% from three-point range. I think that Auburn finds a way to be able to get the job done, as I do think that they're going to be able to punch UConn in the mouth down low. And then I do think that Auburn is going to be taking on Iowa State in the Elite Eight, as in Illinois versus Iowa State. Flat out, I just don't think that Illinois is able to play enough defense to be able to win this game. They've been well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis since the turn of the calendar. You've got an Iowa State team that does a really nice job of being able to rip the ball away as well. It's not like Illinois is terrible at being able to take care of the ball or anything like that, but they do commit about 11 turnovers per contest. It's an okay three-point shooting team, not an amazing three-point shooting team, especially Marcus Somas shooting less than 30% from three-point range. That's a little bit of an issue for Illinois. They're going to have a big advantage on the glass. But Iowa State, I just think that with Taymon Lipsby, Keshawn Gilbert going up against these guards, they're going to do a nice job. And I think that Terrence Shannon is going to be going up against one of his toughest defensive assignments of the season. He's been able to give the team 23 points per contest, but I do think that Gilbert and Lipsby, with the way that they're able to generate turnovers, it's going to be a little bit too much for Illinois. So I've got Iowa State heading to the Elite Eight as they're going to be facing off against Auburn there. And then when you go down to the bottom left part of the bracket, you got North Carolina versus Grand Canyon. This is where the run ends for Grand Canyon. They are a team that has a lot of similar pieces to North Carolina. They're just not quite as good. It's a North Carolina team that with Armando Bacot along Harrison Ingram, they're going to be able to win that battle down low. Ty Grant Foster is an incredible scorer, but so is RJ Davis for Grand Canyon. They have some nice ancillary pieces coming off the bench, shooting threes. You've got that with this North Carolina team, as well as you've been able to get really good production out of guys like Cormac Ryan and company. North Carolina just has a little bit more size, a little bit more versatility. Both of these teams rock solid on defense, so I do like North Carolina to be able to pull that one out, and I think they face off against New Mexico. In the battle of New Mexico versus Nevada, I do like the Lobos. You may recall in the first matchup these two teams played, Nevada just could not hang out there on the same floor as the Lobos, and I do think that for this New Mexico team, they're going to do a really good job of just being able to win that battle down low. You just don't have as much size with this Nevada team going up against JPT Top and going up against also Nelly Jr. Joseph. I think is going to take it out of them, and much like Nevada is a team that really prides themselves on doing the little things, not turning the ball over. We've got a New Mexico team that's also a top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. I think that this is like Nevada on steroids in terms of size or versatility, and I think that Nevada just going to be out-athleted, for lack of a better term there. So we got North Carolina versus New Mexico in that Elite Eight matchup, and then we go back up to the upper right. You've got Houston versus James Madison. James Madison, I actually think, could give Houston a little bit of a fight just because it is an unfamiliar style, but in the end, Houston, I think, is going to be too physical. This James Madison team just not shooting it from three-point range now the same way that they did at the beginning part of the season. Jamal Shedd and all of his versatility, I think, is going to be too much for this James Madison team, as James Madison is going to look to get their tempo, and typically teams that look to get their tempo against Houston, they fail miserably, and it results in them getting blown out. And I do think that for Houston, they're going to be taking on Florida in the Texas Tech versus Florida game. I just don't think that Texas Tech does a good enough job of being able to hit the glass to be able to win this one. It is a Florida team that they are allowing away from home opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range, but with Texas Tech, even though you do have quite a bit of size down low, they're only about 129th in the country with regards to rebound rate. They've got a negative rebound rate when they are away from home, and for the Texas Tech unit, even though they do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball, not turn the ball over, they're also a bunch of, they don't necessarily generate those steals as well, so you're not going to get a lot of ball pressure in this one. That's going to be allowing for some nice, crisp, clean offense from this Florida team. I do think that Florida utilizes their size to be able to get the job done. I like the way that Zion Pullen has been able to run this offense as well. So we got Houston versus Florida in that Elite Eight matchup, and now that we have gotten down here to the bottom part of the region, we've got to take a look at Purdue versus Gonzaga, and I do think that Purdue gets by Gonzaga. Gonzaga does an incredible job with Graham Ike, Anton Watson down low, but I just don't think that they really match up well with Zach Edey. And again, I think that those wily Purdue guards, if they can just get back into tempo a little bit more, because with Purdue, they really had their best success early in the season when they were playing mid-tempo. I've noticed ever since, I would say like mid, maybe even early February, the team has been slowing down quite a bit. It's actually caused for some issues for this Purdue team. They've got a really, really good backcourt that they're able to exploit. Mason Gillis, he's got good versatility as well. Gonzaga, typically they look to crank up the tempo, and I think that that would actually be much to the delight of Purdue. So I do like Purdue there, and I think that they take on Tennessee. South Carolina has already taken down Tennessee once this year. They split the season series. I just think that Tennessee is the better team in terms of being able to glass. You just have even better depth with this Tennessee team. Even someone like Josiah Jordan James is able to give you 9 points, 5 boards. He's got just so much versatility. Love what Lamont Paris has been able to do in year number 2 for this South Carolina team, but I do think that the run ends here. I think that with Tennessee having that star scoring don't connect where you just don't have that for South Carolina, though I love Colin Murray Boyles down low, but at the same time, going up against Toby Awaka, Jonas Adu, I think that that's going to take it out of him. So we've got Purdue versus Tennessee in that Elite Eight matchup, and now when you do get to those Elite Eight matchups and in Auburn versus Iowa State, I do think that Auburn is going to be able to go to the Final Four here. Iowa State does an incredible job of generating turnovers. Auburn does a really good job of not turning the ball over, and for Iowa State, they just aren't as strong on the glass as this Auburn team is. I don't know how they're going to be able to match up with J.N.I. Broome. I think that that's the biggest issue for them. Auburn and their size, they're able to advance to the Final Four here, and with Auburn, I do think that they're going to be facing off against the 1 seed in North Carolina in that North Carolina versus New Mexico matchup. New Mexico mirrors a lot of what North Carolina does, only I think that North Carolina is better and has the best scorer in this game at RJ Davis. I think that that's going to be a big issue for them. Both of these teams don't turn the ball over very much. Both of these teams are up-tempo teams that are also top 45 teams in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So in a battle of two teams with relatively similar styles, I'm going to take the better athletes. That is on the side of North Carolina, though I do think that that would actually be a very close and entertaining game. But that said, we've got North Carolina versus Auburn in one side of the Final Four. In terms of the upper right portion, I've got Houston being able to take down Florida. With Florida, they just don't have the offensive firepower to be able to match up with Houston, and they do give up the arc quite a bit. This is a Houston team that they do a nice job of being able to pop it from three-point range, and typically with Houston, they just get completely outgunned at the free throw line. In terms of the one thing that they don't do very well is that they put you on the line very easily. They don't take as many free throws as you do. This is a Florida team that they're very, very willing to foul. Now, Florida, they love getting to the free throw line themselves, so you might have both teams racking up north of 30 free throws in this one, but I do think that in the end, Houston does find a way to be able to get it done. I do think that he's going to do a nice job of being able to generate some turnovers as well. As Houston, they generate north of 10 steals per contest. They are, in terms of just turnover ratio, the best team in all of college basketball. I think that that wins out here. So we've got Houston being able to make the Final Four, and then you got Purdue versus Tennessee, and I just can't buy into Rick Barnes. It's been a really nice year for Tennessee. Dalton Knecht, he has become a nice go-to scorer, but I think that Tennessee, even with all of their balanced rebounding, they're just not going to be able to match up with this Purdue team. And while Tennessee is good in terms of their defense, they're not as amazing as they have been in past years. It's a Tennessee team that, away from home, they do allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from three-point range. The better of different three-point shooting options for Purdue, I think, is going to be too much. So in the Final Four, we've got Auburn, North Carolina, Houston versus Purdue. I've got Auburn being able to take down North Carolina, as I just think that with North Carolina, even though they're going to be able to match the rebounding of Auburn, even though they've got the top scorer in RJ Davis, I think that Gianni Broome, his overall versatility is big for this Auburn team. Auburn does such a good job of being able to take care of the ball, and Auburn is a better team at being able to generate turnovers as well, and I think that that is going to be a big key in this one, because when you get into the Final Four out there in Glendale, Arizona, it is a case where a lot of things can just go on you in general. I think that what really travels for this Auburn team is that, and on top of that, Auburn is number one in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and this is a North Carolina team that, while they've got some solid outside shooting, it is a bunch that they're looking to bang it down low a little bit more, and Auburn, they do a nice job. That is their forte, that is their strength, and I do think that Auburn's just interior defense wins them this game. I do like them to advance to Houston. I am going to be advancing Houston to be able to take down Purdue with Purdue. Gotta love Giant of the Year, Zach Edey, and it's going to be hard for any team to match up with them because Houston, they just flat out don't have that size. So let's be honest here, but at the same time, you do have a Houston team that they're going to do a nice job guarding the three-point line against Purdue and all their just different shooting options in general, and Purdue just isn't that same team in terms of being able to guard the outside. It is a Purdue team that is not as well coached. Kelvin Sampson, I think, is one of the best in the business, has already made a Final Four once before. I think that he's going to be able to make it too. Houston with the top overall turnover ratio in all of college basketball, going up against a Purdue team that isn't going to cause them to necessarily feel too uncomfortable there. I do think that they advance. And then in Auburn versus Houston, I've got Houston being able to win the national title. Houston, I think with their just turnover generation and the way that they're able to bog down games, get them played at their tempo. It does not matter who they are playing. They are always in control of the game. I think that that is so big. I have all the respect in the world for both of these coaches. Bruce Pearl, Kelvin Sampson, both of these guys have recently made a Final Four. Both of these teams have very complete teams. Both teams, in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, they both do clock in the top 50 in both respects, but I do think that Houston, with the way that they just have so many guys down low, they're able to rebound and they're able to match Auburn, and then having Jamal Shedd, who just does a nice job being able to run this offense, being able to generate turnovers, being able to come on as a scorer. I think that that just takes Houston to another level. I've got Houston winning the national title over Auburn, and in terms of the ESPN tiebreaker of how many points will be scored in the championship game, I set it at a 134. Personally, I could see something like a 68-66. Perhaps we get harebrained with 70-64, but I think that Houston, they get the job done in a relatively nip and tuck game. And that'll wrap things up for the annual NCAA Bracket Special Edition of Coast to Coast Hoops for this lovely Monday, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.